Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Rabinovich, and welcome to the Wareham School Board. This evening, our first order of business is reorganization. Congratulations to our two incumbent members who have been reelected to the school board. And I'd like to take nominations for the position of Chairman of the Wareham School Board. Do I have any nominations? Mr. Sweat.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Kenneth Fonts for chairman.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Do we have any other nominations at this time for chairman?
Mr. Chairman, I move we close the nominations.
So moved. Second. And can I ask that we do a unanimous vote? Is that in order to take a unanimous vote?
Sounds in order to me.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any
Abstentions?
Abstentions, thank you. Seeing none, congratulations, Mr. Fonts.
Congratulations,
Thank you.
Mr. Fonts.
It's now yours.
Now it's all my show. Thank you. Well, thank you for all of that. Looking forward to it. At this point, I would like to open nominations for the position of Vice Chairman on the school committee.
I would like to nominate Jeff Sweat as the Vice Chair. Second.
Rachel Gillette is nominating Mr. Sweat, seconded by Rhonda. Any other nominations?
I'd like to close the nomination.
Second.
Motion to close and seconded. As Dr. Rabinovich stated, we'd like a unanimous vote on this. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 5-0-0. Next, I'd like to open nominations for the position of Secretary on the Wareham School Committee.
I'd like to nominate Rachel Gillette for Secretary.
Second.
Nomination for Rachel Gillette by Rhonda, seconded by Dr. Sylvia.
Mr. Chairman, I move we close nominations for secretary.
Second.
Motion to close and seconded. All in favor of Rachel Gillette for Secretary? Signal by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations. First order of business will be public participation. Anyone in the audience like to address the school committee now, please come forward. Seeing none. Good news, Dr. Rabinovich.
Yes, I'd like, from the superintendent's newsletter, I'd like to mention that the John W. Deacus Elementary School now has Music in the Morning, courtesy of the New Bedford Symphony Orchestra. And this is a program that we brought forward last year. We had none of our administrators that wanted to take part in it, and I want to thank the principal for taking part in this. I think it will be a great thing for our students at Deacus. A second bit of good news is that we have teachers Tracy Cote, Pam Schluter, and Sue Tabor were presenters at the Gateway Project Symposium on March 15th, showcasing the district's strengths in technology and engineering in education program. This, I believe, was at the Museum of Science, and it's part of a grant, and these people did an excellent job. We got a letter congratulating them, and so just, you know, showing off some of our teachers to the rest of the state, which is definitely good news. That's all at this time.
Good news, Rhonda?
I do have a couple things.
Go ahead.
The high school students who are currently taking art of some sort came together and went on a field trip last Friday. Went to New York City. I was one of the chaperones, along with Amy Dion, Tom Tricker, and Janine Alexander. And all I can say is what an incredible trip. We went to go see the Illustrators Museum, then moved on to the Guggenheim, and then from there, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We then went to dinner in Times Square, walked around a little bit, and the thing that will stay with me was not only just how amazing the kids were and how much they enjoyed the trip, but also I counted to 31 probably about 500 times, because that's how many students we had, and we had to keep counting to make sure we had all of them, especially in the middle of Times Square. But you know, what each place that we went to just became more and more overwhelming and beautiful, and there were students that basically said that this was the best field trip ever. So I just wanted to thank the board again, from the students and also from the teachers that participated. Thank you that we approved that trip, and I think the students got a lot out of it.
Not to mention a certain school committee member.
I did.
You're
It was great. The second piece that I just want a piece of good news is that the comedy night, which was a fundraiser for the Wareham Middle School, was a successful event. They didn't sell as many tickets as they did last year, which was unfortunate, because the comedians were hilarious. And the money raised from this event is going to a great cause. If folks don't know, Rachel's Challenge is being brought here to Wareham. If people don't know what Rachel's Challenge is that Rachel Scott was the first person that was killed at Columbine. And this is a program that has changed schools and communities by this presentation. I think that it's a great follow-up to the Increase the Peace rally that happened. And I would encourage everyone to attend this event. So let me just tell you what the schedule is. Rachel's Challenge is going to come to Wareham next week. The 12th is going to be at the middle school for the middle school students, and it's not only an assembly but then also a training afterwards. The 13th will then be at the high school, and then the community event, and this is what I'm encouraging everyone to attend. The community event is going to be on the 13th at 7 p.m. at the Wareham High School. If you want to find out more information about it and see videos and what it's done to communities, go to rachelschallenge.org. But their mission is to encourage positive change in the way that we treat others. That's what the program inspires to do, and again, it has done a lot for community. So, first of all, please attend that event. And second of all, I just want to recognize the folks that put on the comedy event, because a lot of hard work went into it. Charlene Hardy was the event's organizer. Chris Holbrook, Rhonda Atkinson, Annette St. Germain, Jamie Pelletier, Wanda Savory, Sarah Lima, and Karen Dobbins. Those were the members that put together that comedy event. Again, they've been doing fundraising for 2 years to bring this to Wareham, and just do a phenomenal job. So, again, Rachel's Challenge, the 13th, 7 p.m. at the high school. Everyone, please attend. And those are my 2 pieces of good news. Thank you.
Thank you. Good news, Dr. Sylvia?
Thank you.
Jessica? Any good news?
Yeah, but I'm going to wait.
Are you going to wait?
Well, that's in my report.
Okay. I like her. Jeff?
Yes. I was surprised to find myself doing my bus driver thing Tuesday morning at 6:30. I was the driver for some middle school students and a chaperone teacher going to a statewide conference on against bullying. And candidly, at 6:30 in the morning, I thought, okay, the teacher's probably going to catch a few winks, and the students are going to be either noisy or very quiet, and we were going to drive to Boston. Much to my surprise and pleasure, shortly after the trip began, the teacher decided to make this a rather interesting bus trip. She proceeded to announce that she was going to give them a test, but not just any test. Apparently, she had put in her briefcase the American citizenship test that every person has to take who wants to become an American citizen. Now, what's interesting about this is that some think tank decided to give this test to 1,000 American citizens who were already citizens, just to see how they do compared to the people who are trying to become American citizens. Not very well is the answer, because 38% of them failed. 62% succeeded. So we had more than a third of our fellow American citizens failed the citizenship test. So I thought, this is going to be interesting. So she proceeded to give this test to all the students. I was blown away. Not only did they get every single answer correct, they did it like they were on Jeopardy, meaning they were all competing to see who could shout out the correct answer at first. It was a wonderful moment that I didn't expect, and I give kudos to Wendy Brajoli, the social studies teacher at the middle school. And since I don't want to embarrass the kids, I won't give the kids' names, but they all should be applauded for not only their enthusiasm at 7 o'clock in the morning, but also their knowledge, which they clearly demonstrated to be quite superior.
Excellent. Thank you. Rachel?
Nothing?
No good news.
No good news.
Well, I guess my good news is I get to serve 3 more years with a great group here, especially Dr. Sylvia. Big shoes to fill in the chairmanship, but I think this group is outstanding, and we showed it over the past year how we can work together to get things done, and I'm looking forward to working with each and every one of you.
Do you have any comment on the 6 extra votes that Dr. Sylvia received?
Dr. Sylvia, in an uncontested race, received 6 extra votes than me, which is, I will be asking for a recount at some point. I do believe it was a sign. Next up. Thanks, Doctor. Minutes of the meeting, March 23rd. If there are no corrections, deletions, omissions, I'll entertain a motion to approve them as written.
So moved.
You do have a correction. Go ahead.
It's just, it was only because underneath my committee report. If we could just add in the second sentence, where it states this is a working group for long-term partnerships, that is one of the goals, but I just want to make sure that the second goal is in there, which is improving methods by which schools are promoted. And I have that written down. I'll give that to Michelle.
Move approval as amended.
Second.
Approval by Jeff, second by Rhonda. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 5-0-0. Moving right along. Next up is the progress on the school improvement goals at John W. Deacus School. Mrs. Panarisi.
Luzon will be helping me with this. If I can just do 3 things, this, 10, no.
Okay.
I'd like to start out saying that the progress report is based upon not the school improvement plan that was delivered to the committee last year, but a corrective action plan that was designed and collaboratively built for our school once we receive the MCAS exams and results, and also the pre-test from our math and ELA. So the corrective action plan also serves to address student needs, growth areas, and performance areas of students. So that's what we're working off of here. And that's why at the bottom of this section you see it is a working draft, unpublished, because it's not the school improvement plan, it is a corrective action plan for our school for this year. We will have a formal school improvement plan next month. And this is not the color it's supposed to be. I had a very nice golden color, and it's coming up this bright yellow, but that's okay. We're good with that. Next slide. Is it frozen? I have it on thumb drive. I have it on thumb drive.
It's hard to get good technical help, isn't it, Chris?
Bob, how about the arrows up and down? Well, that did it.
What'd you get for being a Mac guy?
It is a nice color.
We're both guilty of that. I'm a Mac person, too.
Press on your projector.
F5.
F5. Hit slideshow start. See where it says slideshow? Oh, wait a minute, I have one of these, Bob, right there.
The thing that looks like,
The button that
There we
presses
go.
play.
We're just giving,
The road to continuous improvement. When we look at a corrective action plan and we look at the things that we need to do as a school and as a district, we don't want to just say that we're going to improve things and we're going to look at things just once. This is something that's constantly reevaluated, constantly looked at. We gauge where we are in the progress, how far we've gone, look at the things that we've done correctly, look at the things that we've done incorrectly, and then we fix them as we go along. So this is really a very dynamic tool, corrective action plans and school improvement plans. So that was the purpose of this little graph, was to just give that indication that we're constantly addressing these issues and changing. Some school-wide corrective action strategies that we did in their overall learning with ELA and mathematics was we had a bit of an issue with crowding. So what we did is we do have the luxury of having two gyms. We took our smaller gym and we converted it into a Title I service delivery area, which really actually services about six small groups during our intervention times. We also have the addition of a study skills instructor who meets in the library with her students, and she addresses basic study skills starting all the way from kindergarten all the way through to grade 5. We have, for the first time, I believe, a schedule that mirrors the schedule over to Minot, and it's a very firm schedule. It has very specified times when we have our intervention blocks, and they are connected to the actual content area instruction, which is always good because it gives you that sense of you can do things immediately. We have the writer's workshop built into our schedule, and we've had some PD with that also. All teachers have received that. We have our literacy and math coaches, and they do weekly in-house professional development after school. They also meet with teams during the day, and they model lessons, and they also take small intervention groups. One of the things that we really wanted to do as a school is we wanted to make what we call anchor papers. And anchor papers are very neat because they take away all that subjectivity of grading student papers, where we sit as educators and we say, okay, what does an A look like if we're going to use the A grades or 100? What does a B look like? What does a C look like? And we use our own student work, and we all filter through our piles, and we try to find samples of that. Then we take all the samples of an A, and we really take a look at all of those A's, and we decide which one is the true A, which one actually meets the objectives and the concepts that we were trying to communicate to our students and demonstrates their learning. So those anchor papers are built solely on our students' work in our school. And what that becomes, it becomes that rubric or that criteria for that paper for children to be able to look at and say, okay, this is what the bottom line looks like. This is what that end picture looks like. And for some students, that's necessary. It also helps teachers grade their papers in a much more objective way. Next page. It's not cooperating. Thank you. We have supplemental education service tutoring for selected subgroups at the Deacon's School, and right now we have 37 of our students inside those programs receiving after-school help. Our care program also helps us with the homework help. We have 34 students in our care program. Both of these after-school areas help us. And there is communication with teachers, especially in the homework area with the care section, in that if a child is enrolled in this program and the homework isn't being completed or they're needing extra help, a note can go back and forth, and so the care teachers or aides will be able to assist the student that day. We have special education instructors, Title I teacher, and aides all use the cluster model. The cluster model is a very neat and unique way of helping all children, not waiting if they're on a 504 or an IEP. If a child needs assistance, the special ed teacher would take a small group, obviously take all children on their IEPs, but also take additional children that also need that extra help or an intervention. The Title I teacher does the same thing. Working within those cluster groups is also benefits children's self-esteem, where they are more included with their peers. And those are dynamic groups, and they change according to the data benchmarks. We have put in the across the district diagnostic pre and post testing of all students in ELA using the grade diagnostic tool, and mathematics using the GMAID. That will also be in place for next year. What we do is we look at student achievement and we look at their performance, but we also look at their growth, because those are the two factors that we really want to balance. Having a lot of student growth is fantastic, but it's not that good if we're not making that performance criteria as we should based on the standards. So there's a fine line of balance between performance and improvement, and we try to keep that in balance, making sure that we're always having our children meet higher standards, but also improving in both of those areas. Monthly benchmark tests in ELA and mathematics, with the exception of the months that we test for MCAS or we have a mid-year test. Those are graded by our coaches, and the data is given to the teachers, so that teachers receive a template that gives students last year's MCAS scores. They also give the GMAID and grade scores for this year, which are your pre-tests. And then we have 2 or 3 so far benchmark scores that teachers are able to look at and see, okay, here is John Smith, this is how much he has grown or not grown. These are still areas of concern. What are we doing? We need to go back and we need to redo some teaching, or we need to have a different technique or a different methodology of delivering that instruction to him or her. We have also given hiring preference in our school to teachers that have dual certification to allow for that full inclusion model, and also have that instant differentiation inside the classroom. It can head off a lot of issues. We are the district school for the elementary age ELL students, and our school has been receiving PD by the coordinator of that program, Ms. Maureen Manning, and she is on site 1 day a week with us. We have purchased and installed whiteboard skins, which change the older chalkboards into the newer whiteboards while still retaining their magnetic ability. And this really improves the visual areas for students while they're learning. It's much more engaging for students when they go up. And we are able to use technology to project. Instead of having a screen, we can project right on the board because the skins are specially made to take that. We have parent and guardian curriculum evenings for mathematics and ELA, where parents come in and we explain the new mathematics program. We'll explain the writing process. They will actually get to try some of those things inside. We have adopted, as you heard, music at lunch and music in the morning program at our school. We also instituted, as the Minot School team, teaching for grades 4 and 5 with the content, trying to move more towards content-specific specialists in the upper grades. We have looked at that 2 different ways. We've looked at it as the elementary teacher not having to plan for 5 different subject areas, which, I mean, that's just incredible that someone could do that. Now they're planned for maybe 3, the Writies Workshop with the math and the science, or the ELA and the social studies. but also it builds in like a collaboration of two people working on the team, which is really neat for having that professional learning community, style of learning between the teachers. But one of the things that we were very surprised at as a building, and again, this is just from observations and hearing the students' comments, is that students are very excited about this. Because some students excel in math, but perhaps not the ELA sector. And so they're going to a whole different teacher who has a whole different view of the way that they learn. And they're able to show their strengths in a whole different area. They also like the idea of having two teachers. So perhaps if there was not maybe that nice mix that we all want for our kids, you're not with that same person every single day. Vice versa, if you have a rather active child or a child that, can test your patience all day long, you can be much more positive towards that child if, you have that child half a day. So I think the collaboration and for teachers and the satisfaction that they have has been very positive, but I also think it's very positive for the children as well. We have dedicated time for grade level and vertical team meetings after school. Every day is designated a certain day. Teachers are also able to meet during their grade level planning if they so choose. They turn in a team meeting form to me every single week so that we can see it keeps me abreast in case I can't go to every team meeting. It keeps me abreast of their concerns or any projects they're doing that, are exciting and, may want to be able to go in on. We have a Principals Leadership Council, which is made up of staff members and myself that kind of bring ideas and changes and improvements for our school to the surface, and then they can go back out and find out and tell the other staff members about anything that went on. The adoption of our everyday math, the Houghton Mifflin Science with professional development has been exciting for us, and all our teachers really love that. The children seem to love it, and parents are excited that there's a new way to look at math and do math, and they're very happy with the idea that we're going to be able to teach them how to do this new math. And we also have the continuation of the Study Island online learning for students, which is also actually we have the online with the everyday math as well. The literacy skills. We have the 6+1 trait writing strategies with the professional development. Each one of our content area teachers has been given, I believe, 3 half-day PD sessions for 6+1 trait. The student writing, just observation-wise, has really taken off, and students are actually enjoying the writing, and I think teachers are much more comfortable and happy teaching the writing. See a lot of juicy words, we say, and a lot of student interest. We are looking for the procurement of funding to purchase the Steckbond vocabulary series that will kind of go along with the phonics that we're looking at as well. And we have our Read to Succeed program, which is a parent volunteer program. They coordinate student reading and try to get our students to read approximately a half hour to 45 minutes each day. We have Books for Bingo, Family Evening, Character Costume Day in lieu of Halloween, where students are able to bring in their favorite book and dress up as their favorite character in that book. The installation of the whiteboards. We piloted some e-writers to try to get our reluctant writers to write, and those did well till the batteries ran dead, and so we kind of thought that this might not be something that we want to purchase if we have to replace the batteries every month. We have an after-school mathematics club for students in grades 4 and 5. And we have our continuous monitoring software from Everyday Mathematics. We use calculators. And we have mathematics vocabulary that address not only our new series but also the MCAS. Big this year were the assessments to track student progress. Again, we use the GMAID and the grade, the monthly benchmarks. Our ELL students participated in the MEPA testing. We have our end of the unit tests in ELA and math approximately every 6 weeks. We have the developmental reading assessment, DIBELS. That's not a summative so much, but you can use it as that. A mid-year MCAS exam is given, and the NAEP testing. Our results aren't in yet. The informal assessments, the formative ones, are the skill trapping, DIBELS, teacher observation, and student response, which is the checking for understanding.
Ms. Panarisi, can I
Yes.
ask you to put on your principal's voice? So I-
Sure. You cannot hear me? I'm
Just-
sorry.
yeah.
Our technology updates, we have a grant that's given to DECUS every year, and we purchased Mimeos and projectors. What they are is they're like a whiteboard, but they're less expensive, and they promote that interactive learning with children. We did, as again, we piloted the e-writers, but we don't think that those are something for us because of the battery usage and things like that. We have the Skype program with Cape Verde. This year, it's one of 3 countries that one of our in-house staff members will be, is on that global team. And we will be sharing lessons and being able to communicate with Cape Verde this year. We have the automated telephone call system for staff, which is another technological area of growth for us. We have the integration of science, simulated science labs in our lab. So students are able to go into the lab, log on to a website, and kind of go through a science experiment without having to have the setup and all the resources that you normally would have to have in the traditional style. They still do a report. And we have our Excel spreadsheets for the collection, analysis, and sorting of student data. The homeschool communications has been expanded even from the beginning of the year. We have a monthly principal's coffee, and we usually have anywhere between 8 and 10. It's kind of filtered out now to maybe 3 or 4 right now, but in the early months it was very well received. We have monthly attendance letters that go out, tardy letters, and we actually assign parent meetings to go on top of those. If we don't get a response or we don't see an improvement in student tardiness levels or attendance levels, we request parent meetings, and parents are required to come in and discuss with us and see if there's anything that we could do to help, facilitate an easier morning for them, or perhaps, there's something, if they miss the bus, is there some way we can get them to school? We're trying all different ways to lower that attendance rate because it's getting up there. We have an enhanced website that has our updates and lots of resources on there if you haven't visited that. We have our partnership with the foster grandparent volunteers. And we have our press releases for all of our evenings. For kindergarten registration, we also publish inside the newspapers. We have an MCAS informational evening for parents. We just had one, and we only had 8 people show up out of grades 3, 4, and 5. So I don't think that's widely popular, but I will still offer that. And the curriculum nights, again, we offer those 2 to 3 times a year. They're not wildly popular, but it's something we believe in, and we want to be able to, serve the people that do want to come. So those will continue. Bullying, we have Officer Walker come to our school specifically to address in the upper grades what bullying is, what it looks like, and look at the cyberbullying, and even certain comments that are casually said to one another could be really construed as being bullying. So our students were very surprised to understand some of those things. We have also met, the assistant principal and myself, twice so far for tune-up meetings, going over exactly what the school resource officer had told us to remind all of our students in all grades, that there is a code of respect for one another and caring for one another. We also have a newly adopted reporting and documentation, as does the rest of the district, and we also have a Friday school program that aids in the discipline process, but it really addresses more or less the social emotional reasons why a student might misbehave, and also serves as a tutorial. Most students get tutorials there. Next year, we're going to have two presentations. One will be actually from this year. It's called Biker Joe from the Yubby Foundation, and that was a grant that we received as a school. And then one for the PTA sponsorship. And then there'll be additional PD and assemblies through Mark. MCAS and AYP. I always save this to the last because there's been a lot of growth and there's been a lot of expansion in our school, and we're all working very hard and very diligently, mainly to make sure that our students have the knowledge that they need. Now, it's our belief that if they have the knowledge that they need, that we're not going to have to worry about the MCAS and AYP. That's going to come automatically. So we're not totally focused on the scores, but we are definitely totally focused on where our kids are, their achievement, and their growth. Overall, we did not make AYP in the areas of ELA and mathematics. Honestly, we went down. But improvement was made in ELA and mathematics for a subgroup of low income, which is pretty hard to do for a school, so we should, take some laurels on that. They represent, that low-income group in DECUS represents 48% of all DECUS students this year. So our numbers are growing in that area. Special education subgroups continue to be our poorest performance areas and poorest growth areas. I think with the addition of our cluster grouping, having models, and having students be exposed perhaps to different techniques and ways and with their peers, that's going to help us. We're also trying to focus in on very specific areas of reading and literacy to help our kids. AYP for attendance is also problematic. We need to really keep an idea on that, which is the reason why we have those parent meetings. So what have we won? What have we done good? We received the Walmart School Appreciation Award, which are gift cards to our staff. We participated in the Wareham Crossings letters and coloring pages to our soldiers. We are a recipient of some very generous Courtyard Garden Project volunteers and resources. We participated as a school for Patients for Pennies, Coins That Care for children with leukemia. We sent holiday cards to the Senior Center for Meals on Wheels, Valentine's for Veterans, a canned food drives for Damien's Pantry, and a seed packet drive for needed families in the gardens for the spring. And we have a newly founded playground committee to hopefully replace our playground. There are some constraints to our progress. Right now, DECUS has approximately 717 students, which is very large for an elementary school. Research indicates that elementary schools that are this large have a very difficult time bringing schools up in their AYP and in their student achievement. We're hoping to prove them wrong. Special education population in our school is approximately 19%, and there are 20 more students awaiting initial eligibility and testing. We have limited after-school programs for students not in certain subgroups, but we do have a pending request that our school council has approved to have a different type of after-school program. It is a pay-for after-school program, and right now the union is looking at that, and hopefully that will all be straightened out. As well as the insufficient learning hours in the elementary, we're looking at that, trying to expand on that. We do need some more interactive technology inside the classroom. How that will look, we're getting our best guidance from Ms. DiFilippo. We have looked at grants. We have looked at piloting maybe an iPad cart, and again, people are looking into all of these things for us so that when we go to spend that money that we receive every year for technology, we spend it in the best way that will service our children. Children missing instructional time for non-school vacations, early pickups, and tardiness. We have been given permission to tie the new full-day care summer program to student attendance. So if a student is out excessively, and it is not excused by a doctor, then we would have the right to say summer school is mandatory, or retention might be in order, or we're looking at retention, but we would think about it a different way if your child attended this program. That is to help children understand the importance of their attendance, and to help parents understand that those missing blocks of learning time cannot be replicated. There are very few students that are that gifted that can miss 25 days of school and still be able to be proficient in any area. If you're missing 25 days of school, you're missing what happens inside that classroom. You're missing the interaction, you're missing the learning, you're missing a lot, and those gaps cannot be replaced. More personnel would be needed to carry out the goals and objectives of the corrective action plan, which does indicate that move towards the RTI process. That is it. And so if there are questions, I know I rambled on with all those pages, gave you a lot of information, but being my first time, I didn't know what you wanted or you didn't want. I'll know after this, I guess.
Thank you. Any questions? I'll start with Rhonda. It's the first letter of the alphabet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
For your presentation, very informative. I do have a couple questions. You talked a little bit about participation in the parent curriculum night, where do you get a lot of participation in the events that you, and what is the average participation?
If we have a holiday fair, there's a lot of participation.
Okay.
If we have a Deacon's movie night, which we do, family movie night, there's a considerable amount of participation. The book fair, for some reason, seems to bring in, that evening that we have the book fair, brings in a good crowd. But we're not hitting the mark, which we have to go back to the drawing board and find out why we're not hitting the mark.
Right. How are they currently promoted?
We send out flyers.
Do you, our technology director has asked the Community Relations Subcommittee to take a look at capturing valid, up-to-date, ongoing email addresses of parents and guardians of our students. How do you currently capture, if you do, capture email addresses of parents and guardians?
That's something that we work towards every day, just as the telephones. To be able to capture a current telephone in an emergency contact is important. That really becomes our first priority. Believe it or not, it's easier said than done. The emails, some parents will give them, some parents will not. A lot of the email accounts are closed. We don't rely on that as a method of communication. We would have to constantly be sending out updates or having people give us updates, and I'm not sure if they haven't been that successful with telephones, it's difficult for people. I'm just thinking emails would be a whole nother nightmare. One of the things, though, to be honest with you, that I feel that we need to do in those curriculum nights is involve the students. I think there needs to be some type of a game type of atmosphere where we look at the curriculum in a much more fun way, and perhaps not as serious, but still making our point across, because the children will bring their parents if there's going to be something in it for them, and there should be something in it for them. This is their school, this is their content area and their learning, and they're proud to be there, and they like being there, they really do. I just think we need, as adults, to form that perfect situation where they want to be there, and I think we'll get more of a showing.
Yeah, and we're trying to figure out different ways and recommendations to show this to us. I have another kind of grouping of questions around the AYP, but I'll wait for other members, and if you can go around again, that would be great.
Dr. Sylvia.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Dr. Sylvia.
Just a couple things.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you haven't had much time to think about this, and I haven't had much time to think about it. And totally agree with you. You cannot replicate what goes on in the classroom. And attendance is very important, for a variety of reasons. I think you hit the nail on the head. But yet, retention or the threat of retention is still pretty much not cast in stone or granite, so to speak.
No.
I think you have to take into consideration all kinds of variables, including socioeconomic, whatever, and also, of course, academic. But I think that at some point in time, we may even have to, as a committee, look at a policy relative to retention, alternatives to retention, as it relates to attendance. If we did have such a policy, do you see that as a benefit or a hindrance? And I would certainly want to double that with some type of corrective, summer work or remediation or whatever. In other words, there would be an alternative to actually being retained, probably over the summer. So would a policy like that help you, hurt you, not do anything?
Well,
and I know you haven't had much time to think about it.
no, I mean, retention is never good, to be quite honest with you.
It's not.
It can do a lot of damage, and it is never the first thing that we go to. But when you're faced with a learning gap and the child does not have those basic skills so that they can address that next level's curriculum, you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard spot. And that's what decision that you make. What do you do for the child? What would be best for the child? I think we need to take away the punitive area. Okay, if you're going to miss school, then you're going to stay back. That's really not the issue. The issue is does this student have the skills necessary to address a fourth grade curriculum if they're in the third grade? That being said, if we had a very focused summer school, which only honed in on the skills where this child's deficits were and didn't waste this child's time, I think you'd see more progress and more productivity. I would feel comfortable as an educator saying, this is it. Now this child is ready. Now this child can go into fourth grade and at least have that content area be accessible to them in their understanding. Are they going to still struggle? Probably. You know, I don't think you're going to come out of that race way ahead of the game, but at least you can address the learning and participate in the learning. And you'll always maybe have to play catch up. Some of that summer learning can be some of the best learning because you're relaxed. You're only focusing in on the areas where you're the weakness. So I think that if the school district did put something into place that, you know, and I'm just going to pick an arbitrary figure here, after 25 days, 25 days of 180 school days, that's a substantial amount of time missing learning. So how do we compensate for that? Where does that learning gap, you know, how do we fix that learning gap? So I think it would help us, but it would only help us if we directed our summer school efforts in a very specific way for each child.
That's good. That's a great answer. For having something thrown at you that cold. The other thing that I don't know if you folks, when you have your administrators meetings or whatever, have ever talked about this, but I used to be a real opponent of K-12, K-8 education. I had the privilege to work in a K-8 system.
To speak in the microphone.
So
Oh, I'm sorry.
You have to speak in the microphone.
Okay.
They can't hear you on TV.
Oh, really? Jesus,
That's a
time
first.
First time in my life I've ever been told to speak up. I had the honor and the privilege to work in a K-8 system. And there are lots of reasons, logistical reasons or physical plant reasons why we can do it. But what I like about the K-8 system is you can work with the same group of kids for 8 years. And those teachers know those kids inside and out because they are in that small school family for 8 years. Has there ever been any discussion at all, to your knowledge, I know you're new, about a K-8 system?
No, not really. that would, I guess you'd have to look at all the research. I haven't even really entertained that idea.
Well, there's pros and cons, but,
Yeah.
in terms of, really zeroing in on the child's weaknesses,
Mhm.
academic, and as well as social, it's a great format,
Well-
because, those teachers know those kids very well. By the time they get to grade 8, there isn't much about that child that those teachers don't know. So it works really well. At first, I didn't like it. I liked the middle school concept, and
Mhm.
I think it was good. It was an advancement, and you could zero in on certain skill sets. But when I did go down there and actually saw it work,
Mhm.
I was impressed by it. The only bad thing about it is when they reach the high school, they're coming to the high school from 3 different schools. So there's no such community in grade 9. But that's quickly overcome. But I was really impressed with that. From the aspect of zeroing in on weaknesses and being able to almost tailor-make a program for each individual student, because the teachers do know them that well. So something to just think about in the future.
I think that the middle school years are very difficult years, and having been the middle grade teacher of a middle school, it's topsy-turvy. So if you did have background, and you did know your child, and you could get them through those little turbulent times because you know this child and that child knows you, they have that trust and that bond that you are going to make this through. That would be helpful. I think that on a personal note, I think it de-accelerates that high school mentality when you have a K-8, when students are at that level.
That could be good, though.
Yes, especially on the bus.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
717.
I'm good.
717 kids, a lot of kids
Mm.
for an elementary school. That's a lot of kids.
Yeah. They're great, though, so it's okay.
I know. Thank you.
I'll come back to you. Jeff?
Hi, Chris.
I'm split.
I've got 6 subjects, and Mr. Chairman, you can cut me off when you want to give someone else an opportunity, just as Rhonda decided to separate hers into. Is there any correlation of parent attendance when you provide food?
We did have cookies and snacks. I mean, we didn't have a meal, but
Do you and your staff see any evidence of hunger in your students?
again, our free and reduced numbers are 48%. I think that is high for our school, because I think our school historically has been lower in those numbers.
Right.
We have seen more parents come in and fill out the forms, and we have seen children that perhaps don't have a snack, and our teachers have been providing snacks, and the staff would provide snacks. Breakfast, we have a pretty good turnover for breakfast. I do see hunger. I see a lot of the people that we would want to come to these different events that we have. I don't think they have the transportation. I think that might be another area that we could look into, is to say, if there's somebody in the household who has a car, or if that person who does have the car, they could possibly be working, I don't know. I think transportation might be an issue.
So maybe if you advertised that you were going to feed them and also offered transportation, you could really bring people
I'd
out?
go, I think that'd be great.
I'd be happy to drive the bus if you think that would help. I'm serious.
How many buses?
I have no idea. You tell me how much. A bus can hold 75 people. How many people would 75 people showing up be a great response?
I'd love that.
Exactly.
I'd cook.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
75 elementary
Yeah,
students.
70. Okay. Maybe more like 50 adults.
50. So Dr. Rabinovich will be driving the other bus for us?
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
don't have my CDL, sorry.
Don't let my smile make you think I'm not serious. If-
I would definitely look into that.
If
We
you
have-
want to try it and see if you can have
Okay.
the impact, because there's nothing like parental involvement, as everybody in this room knows, and you better than probably anybody, to make a difference.
On that one note, if I can ask one question. You had a winter concert, is that correct?
We did not. It was snowed out twice.
How fitting.
My historical knowledge is that when we have a concert or we have children perform, parents come out. So perhaps pairing an event that students are going to actually participate in, whether it's showing off a portfolio that they've worked on, science experiments or whatever, will get parents there. Parents come out to see what their children have done and find ways to get there, and grandparents come, and it wouldn't hurt to feed them also in the transportation, I'm sure, and perhaps having babysitting because of, you know, when you have elementary kids, you may have younger children. So there are definitely things to do, but parents do come out when their children are performing.
I mean, frankly, so many people tend to throw up their hands about parental involvement and think it's just an uncontrollable factor, but I just think we need to go that extra mile, if at all possible, which is what I know Rhonda's doing with her subcommittee as well. Second issue. I'm reading on page 22 that part of your continuous improvement plan is the, quote, implementation of the entire RTI program in its pure, unmodified form starting in 2010-11. Am I reading that correctly? So the presentation that we had seems like forever ago.
Okay.
Could you differentiate?
I can.
Thank you.
This was my corrective action
Yes.
plan, built in September, probably before September, based upon my MCAS scores. So, as an administrator, I sat down, I looked at all the data, I looked at the past data, I said, okay, what can we do? I'm looking at my SPED numbers, I'm looking at everything. And what evidence-based, research-based strategy can I use to help this school and our kids? And this is what I chose as a dream.
Okay.
This
so this
is what I
was
wanted.
your dream, but it's going to be delayed a year.
No.
You're doing it.
We are doing portions of it, a good deal of portioning. The skeletal frame of RTI is in our building. It's in there with the benchmark assessments. It's in there with the dedicated time that we give to ELA in math every single day, 30 minutes intervention blocks. It's in there with the coaching. It's in there with the cluster groups for the special ed teachers and the Title I staff.
So what's missing?
I guess the professional development, the additional staff to perhaps carry out some of the interventions because we just can't get to everybody, and the schedule that would promote enough content area time as well as an intervention time. We may have to adjust certain things, but mainly a lot of this isn't so much as buying a program or things like that. It's more of a professional development and a process that you go through, the data process that you look at, how you group your kids, the continuous looking at the child and monitoring the progress and tweaking the explicit, skill development that we look for. We're not there yet. We're getting there, and we're doing pretty good for perhaps not having all of everything in place. Much better than what we anticipated at the beginning of the year. But we want to be better at it, and we want to be more true to the evidence-based intervention so that we can see the same results.
And the professional development that you think is critical is going to occur when?
I believe our first session is starting, the first formal session through Teachers 21 is starting in June, the week of June 21st to the 20th to the 24th.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Didn't we also kind of begin today?
We did. Yes, today actually. And we also have done differentiation training throughout the year on our half days of in-service.
All of the elementary teachers participated in a training in this auditorium this afternoon. It was one of our half days from 1:15 until 3:15 with Teachers 21 on RTI.
Great. Okay. What just an e-writer?
An
I hate to-
e-writer.
I hate to think that batteries is what's separating something really good from not being available to you.
I don't think it's all, well, I shouldn't say that because it's my opinion that perhaps they're
Ju-
not all there.
I just
they're
don't know what
cracked
it
up to
is.
be. The older version of, it looks like a little mini laptop, but children are able to have a bigger viewing screen for their sentences and paragraphs. So it's not a laptop. They're about $149.
Only word processing capabilities.
You use word processing, and also there is a software package on it that children can learn keyboarding on it. So it's
No
kind of a
internet
beginning
capacity.
type
Simple
of
monitor.
technology tool.
Expensive batteries.
Okay, thank you. Would you like me to continue, or?
Let's go to Rachel, then you have two more, I'll
I-
come back to.
I just have a couple quick,
Thank
and I don't have it in front of me, but you had mentioned with the special ed, you weren't seeing the performance, that it had dropped, but you have the new cluster group, so you're hoping, I'm assuming that, of course, there's a lot of, with the changes, and, you know, you've got to have time to implement the change, and you have to have time to allow that to work. When do you see that, like, re-looking at that and seeing how the performance will?
Oh, we relook at it every month,
Oh, okay.
and we measure student data.
Mhm.
And then groups that need to be adjusted are adjusted. Intensity of the intervention needs to be put there, it's put there. We are now at the level, and I'm very proud to actually say this, that if I have a student that perhaps needs a service in a special ed area, as long as Mr. Luzon isn't listening to this, I do not have a problem as a principal going to my staff member who is unbelievably, you know, they're all work together very nicely, and they will take on another child in that group if that's what that child needs. Because, again, and I think that was pointed out this afternoon, when you look at the special ed process, you're talking about, you know, the testing period, and then the IEP meeting, and developing the IEP, and then what if the child is found not in need of services? Well, that doesn't mean that the child doesn't need assistance. You still have an obligation to help that child. And so we're looking more towards that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that drop that was mentioned in it came from last year's MCAS, that the results came out last September.
Oh, so there.
So
yeah.
this
It's from
plan
last year,
was
so this is-
developed
okay.
from last year's data, and after this May,
see
and
another-
hopefully by the end of August, beginning of September, we will have new data to find out if some of the things we put in place have worked.
And summer school, and it always amazes me how many kids go to school late, and it really is. I've always been, well, my father was in the Army, so we would, you know, we were there before the doors opened. So with the summer school and kind of taking these kids that have lost a big chunk of their school year, and trying to, you know, find the areas that you need to strengthen them with, do you see that would require more staffing? Or do you think it can be
you know, I
transformed?
think it depends on the expertise of your summer school instructor. Any child from Deacon's, and I'm not going to speak for my minor counterpart, but I know this is true of that school as well, we are able to give that teacher who might have that child a very detailed analysis of their strengths and weaknesses. So there's no question. There's no testing, and there's no worry of what John Smith may need. We have a tracking and individual skills where this teacher would able to look and say, I'm not going to be bothering, you know, doing this. That's redundant. I'm moving on to this because this is where this child needs it. Think of the growth that a child can experience if we're not all starting from square one in summer school and the whole class isn't doing the same skill. Not everybody in that summer school class needs that same skill. So why are we doing that?
And as a comment, being a single mom, I just want to kind of say something about like evening programs and stuff. I mean, I've had to work till like 6 o'clock at night, and then you get home, say 6:30, you cram some food down their throat, and the last thing you want to do is run back out the door again. And it really, for a lot of families, it has nothing to do with the actual education of their children. It's just there isn't enough time in a day. And so I'm not really surprised, especially in the economic times now, where people are having to get more creative to make a few extra bucks.
That's
They're
right.
picking up extra jobs at night. They're doing this, and families are running at an exorbitant speed at this point. So I don't want parents to think that they're bad, that they're not attending this stuff,
Right.
or that we're looking at that, because I get caught up in that too. It's like you have to learn to be creative to make ends meet with your family. And it's sometimes it's just not going to happen. You're not going to, rush back out the door, try to make
Right.
a program, and then rush back home. I hate to say it, but nothing's being gained from it,
Mhm.
other than just adding more pressure to the family. So I don't want families to think that in these times that we're trying to inflict any guilt on them
Right.
for not making it, because it's almost impossible for a lot of families now. So I just want to put a little plug in for those of us that are just trying to get by.
Mhm.
So.
No, that's a good point, but there has to be a way that is easier for families like yours.
Mhm.
Is a Saturday easier?
Yeah.
I mean, is that an option?
I would have to say that would be something, I mean, I don't know what the logistics or the
Mhm.
cost effectiveness,
Mhm.
but when you do, you put it back to a daytime too. When you start getting into the evening hours, it's, you're trying to get dinner, you're trying to finish up the homework,
The
you've got,
homework,
and if,
right.
I mean, I always had kids that they're in bed at 8 o'clock, and
Mhm.
7:30, 8
That's right.
o'clock, because they were done. So to have a program at, say, 6:30, 7 o'clock at night is not feasible, because they just want to go to bed. And you want them to go to bed at that point, because they're not, it's not a functioning hour. So yeah, you go back and you maybe have something on a morning time, absolutely. But then again, we're looking at cost of opening the school. I don't know what that would entail,
But that might be an option. It might be an option, and as Mr. Sway had said, what if we offered a breakfast, a family breakfast, and we all got in there at 7 or 7:30? I mean, would that be a way to accommodate some of our families? Maybe that's
it
easier.
brings the kids too. Like you said, there will be that, I want to go have breakfast with Johnny
Mhm.
and Susie, and it does, might get a chance for parents to kind of connect a little bit too, and see people that they don't get to see, because they're
Right.
running so much too. It's a chance for parents to connect a little bit too. So.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Jessica?
I'm good.
Good. Rhonda, you had another question?
I did, thanks. The first is very few, not meeting AYP, does that, do anything for the school or the district? I mean, are we going to go into another category from DESI?
No, it's one of the questions we asked the DSAC group from DESE about, how do you go from level 3 into level 4? There are a number of things that go into that. It's not a simple, one test they look at our progress. So as long as we continue to make progress, and they like the different things that we are doing, then we're not going to slip another level.
And I went to that presentation at the conference that I was at, and so I just wanted to make sure that,
Yep.
we weren't hearing anything. Okay. And so just around AYP and learning, just in general, the grade and vertical team meetings, they're mandatory?
They are mandatory, more so at the beginning of the year and the end of the year. The grade level meetings are mandatory, period. But
Vertical team are?
the vertical teams we'd like to meet, because we're at the point right now as a school where we're looking at what is the expectation from one grade to the next. There has to be a list of what is mandatory and what is most important, for these kids. Obviously, we want the standards, but what is it that other things, such as first and last name on the paper, such as, writing all of the homework down in the agenda and having the teacher, sign it. There are certain protocols that our staff is putting into place themselves that they would like to see as they move up. When we look at math notebooks, on a grade level, are they all set up the same way? So if we start setting them up, in unison in grade 4, when you really would begin to do something like that, by grade 5 they have it locked in. So by the time they go to the middle school, they have this process down pat. They know what the expectation is. Our students are well prepared and organized. The study skills teacher helps us a lot with these types of things. You don't realize it when you're an elementary teacher and you work in isolation, teaching everything. When you begin to team and when we sit together as a staff, we begin to find all these different things that would make all of our lives easier, as we move up.
With that, are weekly lesson plans effective? Are we currently asking our teachers to do weekly lesson plans, and if so, are these actually being reviewed?
I do not believe that our contract states that we have weekly lesson plans. I believe the only reference, and someone out there needs to help me on this one, is that they have 3 days. If they are out sick, that there be 3 days of lessons in place. To submit for approval any lesson plans, no, that is not mandatory. However, during our MCAS prep time, where our grade levels work together and they collaboratively develop lessons for the different levels of student skills, they did hand them into me for pride, and they were beautiful. So they're voluntary, they're exquisite, and they worked, from what I saw.
So then my follow-up question, and if you can't answer this, I completely understand, but would you support, if you do see that and see the benefit from them, encouraging that to happen more often?
Here's my feeling on it,
Okay.
and I'm going to address this question in 2 ways. Passing in a lesson plan book, a teacher can fudge a lesson plan book and make it look like it's the greatest thing that ever walked. But it's what happens inside that classroom every day that really makes that difference. When you look at a lesson plan book for a special education teacher, that's a whole different thing, because that special education teacher, that lesson plan book, is your lawyer. It's your lawyer for the district, and it's your lawyer for you, because it ensures that you are carrying out all the goals and objectives of that student's IEPs. So when we look at lesson plan books for teachers, we really have to look at them in 2 different lights. We have to look at them as a special ed side, and then we have to look at them as a regular ed side. I would much prefer that my teachers say, here you go. Here's the lesson I'm most proud of, and I am going to pass it in, and it is this good. I would much prefer, and I would get more from that, looking at the lesson like that, than looking at a lesson plan book and just seeing that. I would get much more. So I think as an administrator, that's just my opinion. It might not be the opinion of all administration, but that's mine.
I think that I look for greater, just that we do know what's going on in our classrooms, and I'm not questioning that that's not happening today. But just coming from the work that I was doing, it was important for me to basically set those expectations with the folks that I did supervise, and
And you should have those. But when we walk through, for example, when Dr. Abinovich comes to the school and we do a walkthrough together, I will explain to him that these teachers in this grade level should be within 1 or 2 lessons of each other. When we're walking through the grades, and we do, I should see similarities of the different content all together. That's how you really know, that pacing guide. If we see a teacher isn't really, on pace, they're falling a little bit behind, we're not going to wait for 2 weeks until they're really far behind and students have 2 weeks to make up. That constant observation is really what we're looking at, and you know that through your pacing guides. You also know that teachers are on the same ballpark field, okay, by walking through and seeing that they are within 1 or 2 days of each other. And they may deliver this lesson in a totally different way, but the content and the concepts are the same. Nothing, not a piece of paper or a lesson plan book, is going to give you more than that.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that point. It's just, I want to ask this question of each one of the principals that come in, because it should know what kind of evaluation is going on. Okay, and just one last question. What is, you had up there sufficient learning hours, lack of sufficient learning hours? Can you explain that a little bit?
Oh, I'm big on extended day.
Okay.
I'm very big on extended day, and
Thank you. I just want to make sure that
I-
that was what that.
I believe children need enough time to learn. And so what does that look like in a school? How much is a good learning time? And when we look at the elementary grades, there doesn't seem to be enough time. I know that we're doing things in our contract to improve that, which will help. And you think that 15 or 20 minutes isn't really a lot to improve, but when you talk about taking out a transition and being able to help a child or a small group of children for 20 minutes, that does make a difference.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you, Chairman Crowe.
Dr. Sylvia?
All set.
Jeff?
I was fascinated by your early in your presentation remarks regarding trying to standardize the definition of an A. Could you elaborate on that? And I guess what I'm focusing on is this a dynamic process? And by that I mean, would you expect the definition of an A, and I assume you mean by that the highest grade, yes?
yes.
The definition of an A to be stable over the course of a decade, for example, or would you be constantly redefining what that is?
It would be redefined based upon the content area and the question or the prompt that's being answered. So if I have a writing prompt and my writing prompt calls for informational,
I'm sorry, calls for what?
calls for information for the student to be able to state information, my rubric or my benchmark is going to look a little different. My anchor paper is going to have a different set of criteria attached to it. So inside the classroom, ideally, what we'd look for first is what we call a criteria chart. Students and the teachers develop the criteria charts together. We're going to write a personal narrative essay. What does a good personal narrative essay look like? And we start to outline and bullet all of the things that go along with a good, solid narrative essay. That criteria chart now turns into what we call a rubric, so that we are scoring every child's paper based upon the criteria chart that we made in class, which has now transformed into a rubric of a 4, 3, 2, and 1, 4 being the A. When a bunch of...
It sounds like what you're saying is that you might hope that the percentage of children, students, who achieve an A would increase over time, but that the actual definition of an A would not.
The actual definition of an A would be determined by the collaborative group of teachers working on that anchor paper. For example, grade 4 teachers would sit with 137 student papers, and they would start to sort, and let's use the 4, 3, 2, 1 as the rubric.
I don't think I'm communicating very well. I guess I'm getting at the issue of expectations, which frankly is a huge issue for me with respect to the teacher-student relationship. Meaning that I firmly believe that the higher expectations we have, the better results will be achieved. And I guess I'm hoping that this process that you're describing is in fact dynamic, and that teachers see that they have a responsibility. For example, unemployment in this country is at 8.8%, but a huge chunk of jobs are literally going unfilled because there are not the skilled people to fill the jobs. And that's an education issue more than anything else. So I think we have to be constantly raising our expectations. And that segues into your comment about low income. I'm sure that you're going to deep down say, oh, here goes another raving idealist. But I've got this problem with you feeling good about the fact that you made progress on low income. I don't care whether the child is low income.
Mhm.
You put a uniform on them, they walk in the door, you can't tell who's low income. And at kindergarten, I don't want them segmented into low income, high income, ethnicity, you name it. They're just children. And I really think that we still, not just in Wareham, but perhaps in Wareham, have an expectations problem. That is, we think that if, for example, in this case, if they're low income, then somehow, if they achieve at a certain level, that's good for them. And I want that out of our vocabulary.
I understand and I agree with you, but there are
No, Dr.
two things.
Rabinovich, you can't say anything.
There are two things that
I think
you're
misconstrued
bordering
what was
here.
said, is my point.
Yeah.
I don't believe that the principal meant that. What she was referring to is that her scores are disaggregated by different subgroups. When we are said that we did not make AYP in subgroups, you have to look racially, by economics, because that's the way it's reported. So when they report the progress that we have to make, it is by subgroup.
I know that very well.
Okay.
I've been looking at it for years.
They do that. We don't do that. As a matter of fact, that information is confidential in our school. There are very few people that know this information other than the lunch staff and the school secretary. Teachers do not get a listing of who is free and reduced lunch and who is not. I don't even know. I don't run a list. We don't differentiate like that. We
So
don't.
you're convinced it's not a factor in the expectations of
I
your-
believe that every student at Deacon's School is challenged. I believe that their needs are met by staff members, and that we all try our best to make sure every child succeeds. As a matter of fact,
And the
I know that.
expectations are equally high for every
They are
child.
equally high, and they are high.
Thank you.
They are high.
Could I say something to that?
Dr. Sylvia?
I share Jeff's concern, as you do, because that's been one of my pet peeves for a number of years, that there was some kind of an expectation that it was always good enough for Wareham, and that used to just get under my skin, and it still does, and it makes the hair on the back of my neck curl right up. But, with that being said, the numbers don't lie.
No.
There is study after study after study after study that shows correlation between low income and academic achievement. Now, I know that there are exceptions, but in terms of expectations, especially at the elementary level, you're absolutely right. I think that the expectations are the same wherever you may live or whatever you wear to school. But one of the things that we have to keep in the back of our brain, and I don't have an answer for it because it's kind of a political question, that where we're on one plane in terms of low-income housing, and yet other surrounding communities are on another plane
Right.
for low-income housing. We're in the Boston area for whoever knows why, okay? But as more and more low-income housing is built, you're going to have more and more low-income students. And I mean, that's just a fact of life. And I'm not saying anything about expectations, but there's been study after study that shows that there is a definite correlation between low income and achievement, academic achievement. So I just wanted to put that out there.
And there are those exceptions.
Oh, absolutely. And there's
And-
just as many studies on resiliency and exceptions.
And we will be one of those exceptions.
I hope you're right, and I think you are.
Because, there's a sense of fairness, and not to give a high-quality education to each
couldn't
and every
agree more.
student regardless, it's not fair, and that I don't think you'd find at our school.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of information.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
All those studies, what they really show, and it's a fine point, is there's a direct correlation between the education level of the mother
Absolutely.
and the performance of the child. It's not this general concept of low income, it's the
Well, there
education.
are studies that just exclusively on socioeconomics.
Okay, thank you.
Can I say something? just something positive. I've lived in a town where there was greater allowances, better treatment to the more economically happy families, you
Yes.
know.
The
I
perfect
moved
one.
here and I've never, my kids have gone from West Wareham to
Mhm.
Deacon's to Minot to the middle school and now the high school. I have never experienced in this town an economic difference in how my children were educated. I have experienced that in another school system. I have never experienced it here. And I've always seen a very fair treatment and very equal treatment. So I just want to say that
Thank
that's
you.
something that I found, that's why I am here. That's why we moved here, so.
Mrs. Panarisi, just quickly, can you tell me the progress of the Skype program? I'm excited about that.
The Skype program, and again, I will fully admit and humble myself, I am not the most technologically, brilliant person here. But as I understand it, it is a global 3-year program where we have representatives from each school. Ours happens to be Mrs. Osborne, who is trained in part of this committee. There are 3 countries that we will choose from in the next 3 years. Our first selection would be for a sister communication or brother communication school is Cape Verde. The idea is to communicate with them visually in classes, share lessons, and kind of bridge that language barrier, and for our children to see that there's much more of a other world out there, and for their children to see there's much more of another world out there. I don't know what the selection for the second or third country is. I don't know if it's been made, but I think there's training that goes along with it. And
Made the selection.
you have?
They
They have not. I'm sorry. They have not. But we look forward to that sharing of lessons and learning. I think that's going to be very exciting for our kids.
That's going to be a great program, and hopefully it's something that we can get our local TV involved
that'd
to
be
go in
great.
the classroom, and so the community can see how that's done.
That'd be great.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Is that
Thank
it?
you.
Next up, vote on school choice for 2011-2012.
If I can suggest that people look at the superintendent's newsletter to the 3rd item down, vote on school choice. And tonight I'd like to recommend that the Wareham Public Schools continue as a choice district for the 2011-2012 school year and accept students in grades kindergarten through grade 12, depending on class size, with 2 exceptions. 1, no students will be accepted to the West Wareham Academy as a choice student. And 2, acceptance of students into the Wareham Cooperative Junior Senior High School only if it does not result in a disproportional number of special education students in relationship to Wareham High School.
And both those caveats conform with the law?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent
We have discussion first or after?
after the second.
Okay.
I'll move.
Second.
Discussion?
The comment on West, can you explain why?
Yes, because choice pays us about $6,000 per child, and a tuition student is about $25,000.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
And the caveat regarding to the cooperative?
We have to be careful. The cooperative school is a regular education program, and we can't tip the balance to have more special needs students in that school than regular ed students, or the proportion that we have at Wareham High School. If we do, then we have to go through the same program acceptance that we had to go through for the private day school that came through here.
Ooh. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Motion by Dr. Sylvia, seconded by Rhonda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 500.
Thank you.
Item number 7, proposed resolutions. Mr. Sweat.
Okay. First, I'd like to say that the impetus behind this is for Wareham to start getting some recognition for the leadership that I think it's taking within the educational community of Massachusetts. An example of that would be, I have in my hand something entitled Building a Breakthrough Framework for Educator Evaluation in the Commonwealth, March 2011. It's a, 40-some-odd page document. Half of it's appendices and a glossary of terms. It may or may not be a breakthrough, but thanks to the work of our superintendent and director of curriculum and instruction and the close cooperation of our Teachers Association, there's nothing new here. As a matter of fact, we've gone further than this task force has. So it seems to me we should be getting recognized for that. Secondly, the two issues that these draft resolutions represent, and let me, for those people who are listening or watching, these resolutions are intended to go to the Massachusetts Association of School Committees for their annual meeting so that the entire association can get behind these resolutions and therefore lobby our executive and legislative branches to make them a reality, to come to fruition. The two areas that they address are teacher evaluation and student achievement data as one concept, and then teacher evaluations in general. The reason that I want to address teacher evaluation is because even though there's some good work in this task force by the state, it is missing a key ingredient of success which Wareham has realized is necessary. They have missed it to such an extent that despite the fact that there are 48 pages here, they literally only address this factor once in 48 pages by saying the following. The task force identifies multiple factors that contribute to this variation in quality in teacher evaluation. And then they list 3 items. Inadequate time for supervisors to conduct thoughtful evaluations, excessive supervisory workloads, and competing demands on supervisor attention. All by way of saying supervisors don't have the time to do a good evaluation. Now, what's interesting about this task force is they mention it in that, and that's literally it. If you read the entire document, you won't find anything more about that. But then they expect that the implementation of this 48-page document is going to be a success, even though they haven't addressed the fact in any way, shape, or form that the evaluator, the person who's actually using this tool and is going to be held accountable for it and is going to be using it on our teachers, doesn't have the time to do it. So it just seemed, I felt compelled to bring this to a larger light than just Wareham, and that's the reason for this teacher evaluation. And all this really says is, okay, if we're going to have this, and by the way, much of this is going to be legislated and regulated, and we are going to have to fall in line with this, which, as I said, is fine because we're ahead of it anyway. All it really says is, if you're going to do this, if you're going to create these evaluations, which, by the way, for the first time, will have 4 levels of teacher status. You will be exemplary, proficient, needing improvement, or unsatisfactory. Believe it or not, that's radical. It's not radical here because we did this before they asked us to do it. or I should say we're about to do it. We're doing it now in the high school, and we'll be migrating that to the middle school and the elementary school, assuming we get together with our colleagues of the association, but we're optimistic. So all this resolution says is that you really have to have one trained and state administratively certified instructional leader / supervisor for every 15 teachers. It gets rid of the myth that you can hand to a wonderful principal that, like we have in the room today, and say, here are your 60, 70 in some cases, believe it or not. I don't think you have 70, but actually, excuse me? 88, okay. You've got 88 professionals and non-professionals in your building, and by the way, you're responsible for all their evaluations. There is not a person in the world, trust me, if I have decades of management experience, who could do that job and do it well. So what you have is a trust gap between the teachers and the management. You have a perfunctory, cursory, not worth the paper it's printed on evaluation process, and it's going to remain that way even with this task force unless we relieve the burden of the actual evaluation and put the principal in charge of making sure the evaluation is done well, but not actually doing the evaluation. Let me assure you, it does not mean that we are in any way discouraging the principal for being in the classroom. On the contrary, we want them there because we want them to verify that what the evaluator says is going on is in fact what they see is going on. I could go on and on. You can tell there's some passion in me about this issue. The other thing it says is that instructional leaders, or in the high school they're called department heads, will still spend about 50% of their time in the classroom because we want them, in fact it's critical, that they be respected members of the instructional staff so that they really know what's going on in the classroom of the people that they're evaluating. And finally, and not unimportantly, it says, this is an added cost. Wareham is trying to absorb it. It's really difficult, and the Chapter 70 formula must be adjusted to reflect that additional cost. That's the first resolution. Mr. Chairman, would you like me to do the second one, or would you like me to wait and vote on the first one?
Any questions on the first one? We'll start that way. Start with Rachel. Dr. Sylvia?
I recognize my colleague's passion. And I applaud his dedication to this, and I know that they've been working really, really hard on the observation and when working with the union. But yet, nothing has really come to the school committee yet in terms of anything final, where these negotiations are. So from that perspective, I really do think that this is premature, Jeff. I would rather see exactly what has been negotiated, what is going to be the Wareham plan, how the Wareham plan may differ from this, before I feel comfortable voting for this. Now I know it's just a resolution. I know it's got to go before the rest of the masked people, and to believe it or not, in theory, I do agree with it because there isn't enough time that Mrs. Panarisi can do 80 teachers. It's just impossible. The other thing is some terminology that I didn't quite understand. I didn't have a chance to ask you about it. Is when you're talking about the evaluation. Now, we could have an evaluation and we can have an observation. They may not be the same thing. Okay, I'm not sure if they are the same thing in this resolution, because they're not the same thing. Because you can have an evaluation process that doesn't even include an observation every year. There could be goal setting. There could be individual professional development. There could be, and it could be supplemented or at some point in time an observation. So even though it's part of the evaluation process, it doesn't necessarily tie into an observation. So those are the. But I do, and like I said, I'm probably 90% there with you. But I do have some concerns that we're putting the cart before the horse, because we really, to my knowledge, the committee hasn't voted on anything in terms of the evaluation procedure. I don't think you've come to any resolution that at present with the association. So I would feel more comfortable presenting a resolution to mask when I know specifically where we're going to go locally.
Can I respond quickly to that?
Answer the question.
The reason, with complete respect, because I understand exactly what you're saying, the reason I don't think it's premature is We're actually in the middle of a trial period in the high school doing precisely what this is, and I think it would be really good for the negotiating team that will be meeting for the first time on the 14th of April with our association to have the clear support of the school committee in their efforts to make this happen. Now, having said that, we've been working so closely with the association that I don't expect this to be a problem because, A, it creates a real career ladder, leadership ladder for teachers, and there's economic value to the association associated with it. But I do think it would be great to have the support of the school committee as we go into the negotiations.
All said, Dr. Sylvia?
I guess so.
Yep.
I personally think until we have I'm not even going to say a policy, but in terms we know specifically where this is going to go, district-wide, I think that I would rather pursue it at that particular time. But as I said before, I'm probably 90% there. So, enough said. I'm not
Rhonda?
going to prolong the meeting.
The only thing that I'm wondering if we could add is just in the second whereas where it talks about, and it's when it talks about formal observations on scheduled classroom visits and timely feedback, the development of individual annual goals and documented strategies. I know it says strategies, but it's the theme that we were talking about before, just making sure that it's understood that we're talking about, documentation all along the process.
I would treat that as a friendly amendment.
Okay.
Now, what did you want to change?
Just an adjective, documented
Before strategies.
Add the word documented.
But I'm in support of it.
Question. Can I ask a question? Are we going to have to go over this again, though, if we accept it now, when all the state stuff, are we going to have to amend it? Are we going to?
Just to be clear, this has no legal authority whatsoever. In other words, a vote for this is basically saying it's a vote of support to take it to the next level, which is the MASC Executive Officers Board, which they may or may not choose to be associated with it, and then we may or may not choose to make it not part of a MASC resolution, but simply a Wareham resolution at the annual meeting. And even if that passes, that may mean nothing if MASC chooses not to lobby for it. So it is just an expression. That's it.
Okay. Thank you.
So we don't have an idea of a timeline when Mass is going to...
I'd sent a draft of this to the, what is her title? President-elect of MASC. She very much appreciated it, thought it would be very interesting to hear the dialogue and the debate around them at our meeting. She's not here, but and she said she would get back to me with the protocol for getting it into the annual meeting, which always takes place around October, November at the Hyannis conference.
I guess my concern is probably similar to Dr. Sylvia's, is addressing it at this point as compared to when Mass comes out with, their policy.
It's too late then. Oh,
Is it too late? Yeah.
Mass will not have a policy.
No.
The state will take this document and probably do a lot of silly things with it and try and get it into some regulations, and then we'll be asked to implement it whether we like it or not. This resolution will hopefully pass, and Mass will lobby for it, and then it may or may not get included in future regulations and the Chapter 70 formula.
Okay, so before we proceed, Jeff, if the committee voted not in favor of going forward with this, does this naturally will have an effect on your second?
No,
Two
they're
different-
independent,
Two different, okay.
totally independent.
Okay. I'll open up for any recommendation from the board, if you want to move for approval to go to the next step on resolution of the teacher evaluation only. So if there's a motion to approve Mr. Sweat's
I make
draft
a-
resolution.
I make
That's
a
the way.
motion to approve the draft resolution titled Teacher Evaluation with the friendly amendment of adding the word documented in front of the word strategies.
Second.
So we have a motion to accept the draft resolution with the amendment of documented strategies by Rhonda, seconded by Rachel. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
410. Next, Mr. Sweat.
The second one has to do with the fact that, to a greater extent, and by the way, thank you, everybody, I appreciate that. To a greater extent than the issue of supervisory burden and time, I pulled out one page out of the 40-some-odd pages, and I have that for everybody. There's a variety of comments about the fact that they feel very strongly, and I'll read an opening short paragraph. However, since more than 80% of the state's teachers do not work in fields or grades assessed by the MCAS and are therefore unaffected by MCAS growth measures, there is consensus that multiple additional measures of students' learning and growth are essential to the success of a statewide evaluation framework. This is basically by way of saying there were people on this task force that wanted 50% or more of an entire teacher's evaluation to be based upon data. Now, putting aside my editorial comment that I think that's ludicrous, it is going to be a part. It has not been legislated or regulated, but it's going to be a part. But having said that, these measurements don't exist for 80% of the teachers. In a way, it's silly. So what the resolution that I'm advocating for basically says, okay, if you want some data, then at least generate some good data for the 80% of the teachers that don't have any data, and for the core curriculum, it should be mandated, and for the non-core curriculum, there should be assistance in developing those data. Why? Because the most ridiculous thing would be to have 300 some odd districts and communities all trying to invent this wheel when, after all, since they took 50% of all the RTTT money, $125 million, it would be nice to actually get some value out of the fact that we have this bureaucracy up there. So what I'm basically asking them to do is earn their money by giving us some tools related to these measurements that they want to hold all these teachers accountable for. Now, having said all that somewhat sarcastic negative stuff, I'd like to actually say that I do believe there's an important role for data, and another reason why this should be supported, and that is the evaluation process is a very human and inherently subjective thing. We all know that. We've all been through it, which means it's flawed. If we can use data as a tool, and I emphasize the word tool, not a club, a tool so that it decreases the amount of subjectivity we have in the evaluation process and therefore increases the amount of objectivity, then we're in fact doing the teacher a favor. A good example is, and I'm sure Mrs. Panarisi can understand this extremely well, you walk into an observation and you say, wow, this teacher has it together. Everything good is happening in this classroom. And then you suddenly get the data and says, whoops, nothing good is happening in this classroom because the data says nothing's good is happening. That's really a problem, but it's also an education moment because you have to figure out what's going on that you didn't observe that is causing the data to say nothing good is happening. But candidly, the flip side can also occur, which is you walk in to this unusual classroom and you say, wow, this teacher's doing nothing that I recognize as good instruction. Then the data comes in and, whoa, these kids are learning. How did that happen? That's another extraordinary moment for us to learn something about the art of teaching. So data can play a very valuable role, but unfortunately not enough of it exists and it's not being well used. So what this says is we ought to have the development of state-mandated testing in all subject areas covered by the Common Core and assistance to school districts to develop baseline and post-instruction assessments of all non-Common Core subject areas. I'll give you one short vignette and then I will shut up. Promise. My nephew is a music teacher. He and I, over Christmas holidays, had this discussion. I said, how should I evaluate you? And he said, well, I don't really know. And I said, do you think data could actually be developed that would help you be more objectively evaluated? And we talked about establishing a baseline of competency for his children, his students, before he was able to teach them. And then actually a test that would say, wow, they actually learned the following things and they could play this following instruments. And he said, yes, that would be a wonderful objective measurement of what I've actually done in my classroom. I think music teachers deserve the same level of courtesy and respect and professionalism as math and English teachers. And just because they don't happen to be in the Common Core and are not part of MCAS doesn't mean they should get a more subjective and be at more jeopardy to a bad evaluator. So that's the reason for this resolution.
Okay. I'd like to get Dr. Rabinovich's opinion. I apologize for not asking for that on the teacher evaluation. Any thoughts on this, Dr. Rabinovich, before I go around the table?
Yeah. I'm a little leery of what the assessments are going to look like from the state when we're talking about all of these various subjects. And you brought up music. I believe performance is the way that we evaluate arts, particularly the expressive arts. And I'm not quite sure how you take the subjectiveness out of evaluating that performance. There are various methods that I'm more comfortable with, one of which is a portfolio review. But I don't really believe that the state is going to come up with the money for us to be able to adequately use portfolios to evaluate things like sociology, psychology, and so forth. So I'm a little leery of saying to the state that we won't, because I'm afraid what it's going to come back as we're going to have an MCAS in every single subject, which now takes 3 weeks out of instructional time. And I don't want to give up any more time towards assessment. So I'm a little leery of it.
Just to be clear, I'm not asking, this resolution doesn't ask for that.
But that's what I'm afraid it's going to come out looking like.
Okay, but that's not what I'm asking for.
When ed reform started and we started off with the state standards and they talked about assessment, the first go at it was portfolio assessment. And then quickly they found out through looking at how Vermont did it and so forth that it was very labor intensive, and to do it right, the training that needed to happen. You yourself talked about that, trying to have an A be an A and so forth. It takes an awful lot of work to get that done correctly. And I just don't have the trust in the state that it is going to come out looking like something that we're going to be proud of.
I can't imagine why you don't have trust in the state. But I can tell you, though, that I've had a number of conversations as recently as yesterday with a social studies teacher who really wishes they would take the social studies MCAS off the back burner. because she wants validation of what she's doing in the classroom.
Right, but we're talking about health, we're talking about physical education, we're talking about art, we're talking about music, foreign language, and like I said before, there's a combination between the expressive and the cognitive in these various courses that unless you really assess both parts of it, I don't really think it's a fair assessment. Cliff before has talked a lot about authentic assessment, giving kids a meaningful thing where they have to problem solve and use all of their knowledge to show what they've learned, as at the end doing a graduation when 12th graders have to have an exhibition of their work, so to speak, in order to graduate. This doesn't say that. And so you asked for my opinion, and
I'm
giving
always
it.
happy to hear it.
Dr. Sylvia?
Jeff, you know my passion against this. I will never be in favor of this, ever, 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 ever. I just admire your tenacity. I admire your will on this, and I admire the fact that you honestly believe that we can pull this off logistically and every other way. It just can't be done. Because see that sign up there where I'm saying it's all about the learning? Well, we could take the learning out and put the testing in. It'll be all about the testing, because that's all we'll be doing is testing kids. And in terms of assessment of student achievement, and it does have to play a role to some degree in terms of evaluation of the professional staff, but I think that this is over the top. And I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why I think this. And I don't mean any disrespect. Trust me when I say that.
Cliff, if you didn't disagree with me, I'd be upset.
I know. The educational community is a very complex community, and there's a lot of integral parts, moving parts to the educational community. Not all of which is in the classroom delivering instruction. All right, it would be unfair to even consider that a school psychologist, a librarian, a special needs specialist, that they wouldn't have value, but I can't imagine how we would design some kind of a paper and pencil assessment to affix their value as a professional. We've got teachers that have specialties, like for example, we may have a teacher in our building that is a dynamite jazz pianist, and that our music program is really focusing on jazz, and because of his or her expertise. All right, but yet, if we're going to have a music test, there may not be a single solitary item on that music test on jazz. Does that diminish that teacher's worth? Does the data prove that this teacher is not worth their salt? What about the teacher that is marginal, and you have a different cohort every year, and that cohort gets moved along, so the teacher down the road inherits a cohort that may not be as prepared as they could be. Is that teacher down the line going to be evaluated based on the test performance? What about value added? What about all of these new ideas about whole school initiatives, whole school improvements? Teacher evaluation has got to be considered part of the professional development of each individual teacher and an ongoing process. I don't think that assessment-driven accountability was ever designed to be that much of a part of assessing teachers. Now, I absolutely will admit that there has to be some kind of a correlation between student performance on the MCAS or other high-stakes testing and part of the evaluation, but not this, because you just can't. Logistically, you can't test everybody, and I just don't think it's appropriate. There's no place in here, in my opinion, for the best evaluation possible, which is performance-based. And if, especially in those peripheral areas, areas of music and art, in which kids can actually show mastery through what they know and what they're able to do through a performance-based or an authentic assessment. So, I'm not going to get into it, but for a variety of reasons, I can't support it now, nor would I support this in the future. It just is contrary to what I believe philosophically. So, I'm being honest with you. But, as I said before, I do respect your passion for it.
Rhonda?
I have to agree with my colleague.
Which colleague?
Not
I'm a
Not
colleague.
you!
For a couple of reasons. I think that if I would have read this before the Mass Day at the Hill, I think that I probably would have wanted to dive a little bit deeper into it. But based on the Mass Day at the Hill and where they came from when it came to unfunded mandates, what's coming down from the state, all of that, I have to agree with Barry that I'm concerned of what would come out at this time. Would I want to look at it further down the road? Maybe. But what I'm hoping is that the first resolution that this group just passed will get us closer to what this one's trying to do, because it is around enhanced supervision, evaluation, that will I think get us a lot closer to that.
Agree.
But asking the state to then come down and do additional testing, it scares me. So that's my comments.
Rachel?
I'm a colleague too, remember?
But I don't agree with you either. And only because I have no faith in the state. None at all. I think that even through MCAS, we've taken away the freedom of teachers to delve into their creativity and being able to teach. And I would hate, I would desperately hate to see an art teacher or a music teacher have to follow into guidelines. I mean, to me, it just strips them completely. And I think in a lot of ways, even the MCAS strips teachers of a special gift that they have, and I'd hate to strip them even more, and especially in areas that should be the creative outlets for, especially for students, but to excel in, but to have teachers literally handcuffed to what they can teach in those things I would fear. Does that what you're looking at? No, I know that's not coming from you, but that I do see coming down from the state. So I know it's not you. It's.
You're afraid I might be a catalyst for something.
I'm
worse.
afraid of giving them any more ideas.
Open up that door wide open.
It's like it just the state would run with it, and they will run the wrong direction with it as usual, and so that would just be my fear, handcuffing ourselves to becoming just a blah education system, just a, I don't know.
Kenny, just one more just to follow up to Rachel, is that okay?
Go ahead.
But I don't, so I agree with you, but also I don't think not passing this doesn't mean that we still can't demand this type of thing here locally within each one of our schools. Transparency, greater, we can take a look at different ways to achieve this, but not going through the state to get it done. So if there's a concern on this committee about assessments, then we should take a look at that and decide on what are some of the things we can do here locally. It's just, I wanted to follow.
She still hates me, but that's okay.
No one hates you, Jeff.
Jeff, I want to agree with you just so it doesn't look like we're all piling
Ganging
up.
up on me. Thank you, Kenny.
But I can't.
But-
I can't. I echo Dr. Sylvia's concern about just over-testing. That's where my issue would be. And also, I think Rhonda brought up an excellent point that the first resolution might get us closer to where we're trying to be, on resolution number 2, if you will, for teacher evaluation and student achievement data. But right now, along with all my colleagues, with
Not all your colleagues, I'm a
a
colleague.
majority, I have a hard time supporting this at this time. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, could I withdraw this resolution?
Mr. Sweat, I was hoping that you would do that so we wouldn't have to take a vote. So you would like to withdraw?
I'd like to withdraw this, and with my thanks on the first one again.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very well. Student attendance data report. Dr. Rabinovich, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. If I might take a liberty, probably I should do this during my report.
Okay.
However, I do just want to comment. What a pleasure it is to see members of a board have a potentially inflammatory conversation, disagree with each other without becoming disagreeable. Nobody was threatened. Nobody was shouted at. And I think everybody governed themselves like civilized adults.
Grown-ups.
So that's all I would like to say on that matter.
Thank you.
Well taken.
Now, for the attendance, student attendance. The way this is presented in your package, you have, it says student attendance 2010-2011. This is a snapshot that shows from September 1st through February 28th. And so it's the average attendance for those months altogether. And we can see that at that time, the Deaconess, the Minot, the Hammond, the middle school were all above 95% where they need to be to make AYP. At the high school, the cooperative, the east and west, we are below. High school is within striking distance. The co-op and west in particular, we have issues with attendance, and the principals are aware of it and are working. I'd like to remind the committee that both principals, or the principal at the co-op and our clinical director at West, are new this year, and so they don't have a track record with this, and they've seen the problem and they have begun to work on it. And down below, it will show you for the month of February, we compare the attendance for each school, and so if you look at Deaconess, there's approximately a 2 percentage point increase. At Minot, there's about a 1.5% increase. Hammond, a 1% increase. Middle school, close to a 2% increase. The high school, about a 0.8, or rounded off to a 1% increase. Co-op, unfortunately, went in the wrong direction by 1 percentage point. East also went down by about 1%, but West definitely has increased. If you look at 210, where we were at 76%, and we're up close to 86% in 211, it is definitely moving in the right direction. So again, this is a snapshot. We will look at this again at the end of the year. The schools, when they do their school improvement plan, will give you the average through that point. So, the schools that do it in May, it will be, through May, and those that do it in June will do it through June. So this is something that all the schools are definitely working on. Before I move to the next document, are there any questions about this particular one?
Any questions on this particular document? Rhonda? Good?
No.
Dr. Sylvia? Jeff?
I guess the only thing that surprises and disappoints me is the high school, and especially the month of February. Do we have any idea what's the contributing factor is? By the way, having said that, we have the principal of the Deaconess School, and my compliments on the 95.3. I know that's not a slam dunk easy thing to do, so well done. And to Joan and Howard as well. But what's happening in the high school? Do we have any feel for it? Jessica, would you have any comment on that? You don't have
Well,
to.
What's your overall question?
The overall question is why the attendance is down to 93, and in fact in February it was down to 92%.
I think with more people just in general at the high school, it's a lot easier for sickness to spread. I know, at least for me in particular, I was out for a week last week because I had the flu.
So you caused this problem.
I
Actually, you
don't
didn't.
think I caused
This is
about-
April and March, so it's not relevant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't feel bad, Jess, we contributed.
I don't think
so.
I caused the 700 absent last month or so, but I know with some cases the doctors require you to stay out, and with being in such close proximity with that many people, it's easier to spread. Just in general because there's so many more people. I do think that having the dean system is helping with it.
Membership?
From last year, I've noticed a decrease in the amount of absentees just in general, but I think just the amount of people that are in the high school helps things spread, which causes sickness.
Can you think of anything we're not doing that we could do that would contribute to better attendance?
Not at this point in time.
I think it can see it's conducive to they start to get into high school and the activities become greater and the sleep becomes less. And so I think that there's an age factor here, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's kind of nature's course. You know, they're pushing themselves. They have longer days, more activities, less sleep. They work.
Work, activities,
nobody wears
homework,
a coat.
study.
You're right about that.
But I don't know. I think the hormones keep them warm, but I've seen it. We've contributed to the absentee numbers too, Jess. So yeah.
Okay. Dr. Rabinovich, continue.
There is another, I believe everybody, you also have this package.
Just the top sheet.
Just the top sheet you have, okay. And that compares 3 years to show how many children are attending which schools. So, you know, the regional vocational technical school, which is Upper Cape, you can see in 08-09, it was 196. We've gone up to 219 in 09-10, and then 216. So, it's gone up from 08-09. Out of district choice definitely has gone up. We had 13 students in 08-09. It's gone up to 30. And I would say to you that that's predominantly because Old Rochester has opened up choice, which they had not until one of our retired principals moved down the road and made it an option for them.
It was a smart option.
Out of district charters, it's actually gone down. So, you know, from 24 in 08-09 to 17 in 10-11. The agricultural school stays pretty constant, somewhere between 7 and 9 students. Remember, that's a budget item for us. It comes right out of our net school spending at approximately $18,000 per child, where the Upper Cape gets separate funding from the town, does not come out of our net school spending. In-state, private, and parochial, again, you know, it pretty stayed about the same. Out-of-state parochial, we have one child. I'll have to look later to figure out where that one person is going. Collaboratives, again, 08-09, 13. We only have 9. Last year we had 8, so it's sticking about 8 or 9. Private special education, these are our out-of-district special needs, high-priced, 08-09, 16, 20 in 09, 10, and 23. You'll remember that we had a particular House for Humanity, or Home for Humanity that was built, and 2 out-of-district children from another school district moved in. It took a year, but now they're on our rolls going to an out-of-district school, and they're on here. We look at our own, and we can see 0809 at 3091, this year 3022. So it is down a little bit, but when you look at 12 different grade levels, it's really not a lot per grade level or per school. Not enough to make any major difference to be able to, offer less offerings. And it shows you state wards in district. This is something that people ask on occasion. 0809, 79 state wards, this year 63. And whether that 63 has anything to do with the closing of a particular motel, I'm not quite sure. And in district choice, that has also gone up. So that's other school districts sending us their children. And then it shows the total at the end of the paper. Any questions?
So our numbers going down, is that reflected on the numbers going up for regional tech and out of district, or those numbers come from that?
Our overall enrollment is decreasing.
Okay.
And part of that is the economy, in that, there are lots of areas that would be building homes and people moving in, but that hasn't happened. A lot of those home starts, they will come back.
We've got a lot of housing available
Mhm.
over here.
Yep.
Okay,
Out to your left.
I'm going to start with Jeff.
Actually, our numbers are decreasing, but in talking to my colleagues on the collaborative board, some of the Capes schools are getting decimated. So these are very modest decreases. The only real question I have is, do we track the number of kids who apply for the regional techs and don't get admitted?
I'm sure that we can get that data because through the middle school guidance department is where all the applications are processed. I think the other night, those of us that watched that particular presentation that Superintendent Farr made, he complimented Wareham in that once the tech schools got slammed in the newspaper because of MCAS scores, the formula for admittance to those schools changed, and so it's on your grades, on your attendance, on your behavior, whether or not you get in. So they have been taking children that they expect to pass the MCAS, where before they took children that we suggested would be better working with their hands through authentic assessments and so forth. There are less spots for children that sometimes we feel need that kind of an education because of the pressure that has been put on the technical schools because of the assessment.
Yeah, I'll be upfront about that. I like that data because they're always coming to our town meetings asking for a lot of money, and
Yeah.
sometimes disproportionately more than this district is getting, and yet they're creaming, so to speak, and I find that disconcerting. So I would love to have that data before town meeting if that's possible.
And Dr. Sylvia had asked, but I'm going to say it, Michelle, so you'll remind me to get it. I was supposed to meet with Superintendent Farr last Friday, but because of events in the district, I did not go.
I don't want to suggest that the technical school doesn't do a great job. I think Kevin Farr
I understand.
does a wonderful job over there. That's not the point.
The second bit of data that was looked for was the per pupil expenditure for Upper Cape versus Wareham, because it was a little confusing as it was presented in the presentation, because he showed the minimum spending at the different feeder schools. So Sandwich has a higher per pupil than Wareham and so forth, and there was no averaging of it, so you couldn't really see how much do they really spend per child.
It's a lot.
So that's part of the data that I think that we'll, I'll try to get together and we'll show
Thank
you
you.
next week.
I was gonna bring it up, Mr. Chair, I was
Yes.
gonna bring it up on the new business, but because it's pertinent to this, could I bring it up
Go
now,
ahead.
or do you want me to wait?
No, go ahead.
I did ask Superintendent Benovich to look into two issues that are kind of bothering me. And it's been, not bothering me, but I mean, it's been something that I've brought up in the past. And one of the things that has bothered me is exactly what you just said, Jeff, is there's been a disproportionate increase to their budget. Now, I know that it's pretty much an assessment, and I think under the law, 3 town meetings have got to vote no for them to come back to us with a number. So that's, I don't know what the chances are is they're happening. But I do know for many, many years, they were coming in with 4 and 5% every single solitary year. And we're struggling to get 1. And to me, from where I sit, it's just not fair. And then the other thing, I wanted to get a true picture of what their per pupil was in terms of hours, because if there's going to be an increase year in and year out, then I would like to see what the differential is between what our per pupil costs are and the real per pupil costs at the voc school. And then the other thing that kind of took me back a little bit is the fact that there was a comparison made between the dropout rates between the 2 schools. Well, that's apples and oranges. Because someone that goes to the tech school wants to go to the tech school, and the chances of them dropping out are pretty slim. So, and if they're asked to leave, they come back to us, and there's still not a dropout. So, I'd like to get that information, just so I can make an honest assessment when it comes before town meeting, and I would like to get that before we go to town meeting in April. So, I was going to bring it up on the new business, but
I will definitely have it for us.
Rachel?
I'm all set.
Good. Rhonda?
Dr. Benovich, why, so between 2008 and 2009, the total Wareham school-age students,
Mm-hmm.
and between 2008 and 2009, it went up by 18 kids, and then we dropped 54 students, or school-age students in Wareham?
Which one, school-age students?
Yeah, so
All
the
right.
totals at the end, so we went up by 18 between 09 and 010, but then we went down 54 between 10 and 11. Do you know any reason why 54?
That would be all of the students who are of age, so in other words, the number of children who graduated outpaced those coming in at kindergarten level. And it isn't just Wareham Public School students, it's all children that go to any schools that live in Wareham.
Right. And then just point of information, the tech school's budget, 5 towns contribute to that budget. Is it broken up by the number of students that go? So we would pay more because we have more?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct. So once they determine their budget and how much they need per pupil, then there is a multiplication factor, but it's not just for materials. There's also a capital. It's a regional school runs as its own school district and has certain capabilities. One is to have capital and to bond just like the town does, and the other part of it is that they have a reserve account that when there is money made from various activities that can go into that reserve. There was another terminology for it, which I forget off, but that he mentioned in passing, but I know that when the state lowered the amount of reimbursement for transportation, because the regional districts get reimbursed for transportation while the district schools do not.
More accurately, no longer.
No longer. The law actually says that we should be, but they don't follow the law. Another unfunded mandate. I'm sorry. Carry away.
All set?
All set with that.
Thank you. Proposed school calendar.
So we have no easy items tonight.
No.
I was going to say.
We tabled this from a previous meeting to address some issues.
If I may, did members of the committee get the email that I sent out.
Mhm.
There were at least two parts to that email. One, I think, was my email to the attorney, where I asked, I have not heard back from the attorney, by the way, but I quoted the section in the contract that talks about, it is, let me see if I can find it here, I should have had it. Teachers work here, page 14. All right, it says, the work year for teachers and nurses may begin no earlier than the week prior to Labor Day and shall terminate no later than June 30th. The association and committee shall jointly establish the starting day if earlier than the Wednesday prior to Labor Day. The committee shall consult with the association to establish the school calendar. The work year shall consist of 180 work days with students plus 4 work days with no students. Then it goes on to tell us about new teachers having to put an extra 2 days in. When I received the letter from Ms. Mars, who's the president of the Teachers Association, she was not against starting school early. She only had an objection to modifying and lengthening the school year for the purpose of accommodating elections. Now, I don't know if it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago, Mr. Fonts came by my office. We sat down with the town clerk, and we talked about what made sense. And we talked about the safety issues that we felt we had at the various schools during voting. And we were asked, is it possible to move around the in-service days and for all the elections? And I asked, was it possible to have the April town election, the annual town election, moved to a Saturday? And so what we came up with, and I have presented this to Mark Andrews, and he was willing to work with me to make it into an article for October town meeting, that we would put on the town meeting to ask to have April town meeting moved to a Saturday, and I said that I would be willing.
Town election.
Town election, thank you. And that the other election that I would move, either it would be a vacation day or it would be an in-service day. Next year, the elections are in March and April, and I did not want to go all the way from August to March without having an in-service day. So my feeling was we needed to leave one of our in-service days where it was earlier in the year, because that's when we get the MCAS data, and we have our data day, so that I would move, one of the days would be an in-service day, one of the elections, but the second date that I would have a vacation day. So nobody comes to work. It's a no-work day. The kids stay home. The teachers stay home. The schools are available to the town. And the net result of that is closing school 1 day later. So instead of school closing for students and teachers on a Thursday in June, I'm going to say the 18th, I don't know the exact date, it would close Friday the 19th. And I feel we have the right as a committee to do that. I have consulted with them, and I do not believe it is a mandatory subject of collective bargaining.
And I'll say, before I go around the table, that especially over the past few weeks, what has gone on between the elections and the concerns of the schools taking a stance, as is reported, not to allow the elections in the school. It comes to a point that the two groups have to work together for what's right for the town. And I thought that myself and Dr. Rabinovich and Town Clerk Mrs. Silver came to an agreement for 2012, and also talked about looking forward to 2013 and beyond for some other alternatives for a way to make this work. And as Dr. Rabinovich said, one of them is the potential of moving elections to a Saturday. I strongly feel that the school department is making a good effort. We're reaching out to the, hopefully the teachers understand we all need to work together in this. It's going to save the town money by them having the ability to use the schools compared to private facilities that they're now utilizing. So that being said, I'll go around the table and get some feedback on the calendar, Rachel, as to what Dr. Rabinovich talked about.
I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a I like the idea of the kids not being around during voting. I think we work very hard at keeping people out of our schools that don't need to be there and shouldn't be there. And then on a couple of days a year, we open the doors and we let them all in. And I think that's, it opens the door for problems. I understand also the parking lot problems. The only school I have experienced was Deacon's, and I remember it being quite chaotic in the morning, and those extra cars were just, it's not necessary. My concern was, is it going to put us into a conflict with the teachers as far as collective bargaining? That was my biggest concern. That is the only concern I have. But
if it does, there is a mechanism for solving conflicts. It's called the grievance way of solving it.
Jeff?
First of all, I applaud that you and the town administrator have come up with some creative solutions to try and save the town some money, and as Rachel said, make sure that we continue to keep the kids safe from those risky situations that sometimes occur and have occurred in the past. Do I understand you correctly that if the town approves Saturday voting for local elections, which I think is a great idea, and to Rachel's point, we had very low turnout, and maybe parents who are just stretched to the limit during the week will be able to find the time to vote on a Saturday where they wouldn't have during the evening. So I think that's a great idea. But do I understand it correctly that not for this coming year because we haven't gotten approval from town meeting, but if Saturday voting is approved, that we will be able to move the last day of the year back to a day as a result of that? Or is it always going to be somewhat in flux?
No, I do believe that we will be able to do that, and I'll tell you why. Because in 2013, there are 3 elections. There is a September primary, which may work for us for our day-to-day. There is a November date, which may work as our second. I mean, no, we may have to go away from Cape Cod Collaborative, but may work, or that could be the vacation day. And then we have April. So if we can get April moved to a Saturday, then I can take care of the 2 days without necessarily, particularly when the election is early. And then the following year, there may only be 1 election. So I have my second in-service day on that day in April, or whatever the day that is.
So the association's concern may only be a 1-year concern from what you're telling me.
That's correct.
Okay.
And to be transparent, Ms. Mars and I have crossed paths in trying to have a conversation about this. The conversation has been by email.
And this is for 2011, 2012 that we're voting on, so.
Only one
right,
calendar.
so
That's correct.
this will be back in front of the school committee again for
Yes, it will.
2012, 2013, where that date could fluctuate.
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Sylvia?
I don't have a problem with the calendar. I don't even know if I should mention this now, or I don't even know if it belongs here. Because basically, this whole calendar, the changes in the calendar is to accommodate the polling areas.
Yeah.
And the misconception out there that we were trying to throw people out of Deacon's, which is not the case. But at least I appreciate the efforts that you have made, Kenny and Dr. Rabinovich, in solving the situation. But I don't have a problem with the calendar, but I don't know. I'll risk it. I just don't understand why it has to be so expensive for an off-site for polling. I mean, it would seem to me that if you had a facility and you were civic-minded, that you would offer that facility to the people of Wareham one day a year. So I just don't understand why it's become so expensive to go off-site. And I know it's probably has nothing to do with this, but it seems to me that there are enough places in Wareham that could be utilized as a public service without mandating any changes in the school calendar. So that's my only point. Yeah, I don't have a problem with the calendar, but the whole idea that we have to change the calendar doesn't set all that well with me.
And I think that this might be a one-year thing. I can't speak for the town clerk, but various facilities, some charge and others do not, as was discussed in our meeting. So I'm not going to say who charges what. I don't know, but that would be something for the town to work out with these local businesses
Well,
or
I
whatever.
just think that they could probably do that, because I think everybody has to step forward and do some public service,
Right.
and that would be their share.
But I do agree that if we're able to move the elections to a Saturday, they might see a significant increase in the voter turnout.
Yeah, that's true.
Rhonda?
Okay, I don't have a problem.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Cliff, I think that coming from kind of facilities management in former, two reasons. One, I mean, you can basically blame the economy that these facilities, they're getting low turnout when it comes to renting their facilities, and they basically said, we're going to have to be able to get it any way we can. And the other thing is really setting a precedent that if they say yes to one, for whatever reason, then it might open them up to other people saying, well, you do it for them, why not us? But, I mean, I understand, but those are two reasons why I would think that facilities are basically just saying, I want to work with you, but in this case, just can't. But I just want to make sure that what also is said when it comes to each one of those, that it was not the decision in the very beginning, from what I understand, was every single school had to be looked at differently, and really three categories of issues depending on the school. Capacity, because our schools are busting at the seams right now, and if the capacity, we used to have gym, but now the second gym is now taken up for classrooms. So there's a capacity issue, there's logistics when it just comes to parking or just the flow of traffic getting out, so logistics, and then, yes, then there's security. But, again, it's you just can't take a look at all schools and say it's one problem across. You have to take a look at each one of the schools. So I do applaud Dr. Rabinovich and Kenny for going and working this out with the town. The one question, well, two questions is, do we need to wait for legal opinion before we take a vote on this?
No, my reading of the contract, and I've read a lot of contracts from both sides of the table, is that we have the right to do what we have the right to do under management rights.
Okay. The second thing is, and I know this doesn't affect this year, but going forward, is that if the elections are moved to Saturdays, which I do agree, I am in support of that, and let me say this, I'm supportive of putting it in front of the voters and the town to make that decision, and let them decide on whether it's right for and have the arguments on both sides, so that's what I support. I would like it on Saturdays, but, again, I support putting it in front of the town. But if it is moved to Saturdays, would that put an additional financial burden on the schools, opening up the schools,
Sure.
the electricity, as well as hiring of the folks that are going to have to come in and?
Yes.
Okay.
Jessica?
This isn't really about the voting, but just having school start earlier in the year in general, which I personally like that fact because it gives students, say, an extra day or two in class. So when it comes down to getting the material in to learn it before MCAS or AP testing, you are allowing them, say, an extra 1 to 3 classes. And that can make the difference between, say, just getting all the material in, or maybe having half a week to a week to review the material. And I know for one of the AP classes I'm in, we've scheduled it with the teacher that we meet after school, and we actually have like study reviews. So that could actually be more helpful in the classroom, just in general, pushing school forward a couple of days.
Thank you. No further questions. I'll entertain a motion to accept the calendar as proposed by the superintendent.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Acceptance of gifts. Dr. Rabinovich, you're up again.
Can I see the newsletter, please, so I can? Acceptance of gifts. I will recommend acceptance of the following gifts donated to Wareham High School. The funds to pay for a motivational speaker, Alton Jameson, from Peter Couloris of Meineke Muffler in East Wareham. So that's the first one.
You're going to do them both?
All right. And 24 hours of labor for the building of computer lab stations, these are the tables, in the library from Ron Morgan of 2 Summer Street, Wareham.
Thanks.
Mr. Sweat.
While I applaud anybody who's willing to work that much time on behalf of the school, it sounds like he's going to take his labor as a deduction, a tax deduction, because otherwise why would he go through the process of gifting labor as compared to materials or dollars? Is there any implication to us with respect to that?
I don't believe there's any implication, but when the high school principal said he had somebody that wanted to do this for him, I said that he needed to write us a letter and we had to accept it.
Okay.
Rather than somebody just coming in and working. That way it is an approved activity rather than having somebody come in and just, it's a way for us to keep track of what people volunteer to do in the various
So
buildings.
someone's going to document that this actually took place.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And quality control as well.
Thank you.
So are you moving approval?
I'll move approval of both.
Second.
I have a question.
Dr. Sylvia.
I don't quite understand the first request. Is it that we're accepting the funds to pay for this speaker that is being recommended by this person? Or is this speaker someone that the principal wants that this organization is paying for? Because I would not approve it if I thought it was, I'm going to give you some money to get this guy in and talk to your kids.
The principal is aware of who this person is and wants the speaker. And I believe this particular person yearly pays for someone to come in as a motivational speaker to the
Okay,
high
so
school
he is
staff.
not, this organization that's donating the funds is not advocating this particular speaker?
That is correct.
Okay, fine. I can live with that.
Any other questions?
Move we accept the gifts.
It was moved
Oh, there
by...
is moved, you already got it
You
moved.
seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good. Jessica.
Jessica's turn.
Jessica, you have hung in there all night.
I know. Now I've
You're
got
up.
my good news.
Could I have a point of order before
Yes,
Jeff
sir.
starts? And this is just something for your consideration. It's really late for her to be giving a report now. Could we maybe put her up more?
Yeah,
In
one
case
step
she's got a
behind.
test or
At our
something?
next meeting, she will be at the top of the agenda
All right.
after our...
Great.
Uh,
Because, you know, she
any
may have a test or
presentations.
whatever. It's, you know, it's 10 to 10 and she's still here and she is a
I
student.
was just following your old format, Dr. Sylvia.
No, that wasn't my format. I never had her at the end.
We deserved it. We put ourselves at the end, though, so
Right,
that the
right.
speaker could go and...
Go ahead,
ahead,
Jessica.
Jess.
Okay. Well, I have 3 things. I think they're good news, personally. One is that tomorrow night in the Wareham foyer, and I'm not sure if it's 6 or 7 p.m., there is the annual art fair.
It's at 6 p.m.
Oh, 6. Oh. Well, there's that. So everyone can attend. And then...
How about the proceeds? Why don't you tell them where the proceeds are
I
going?
didn't know where the proceeds went. Well, do they just don't they just go to the art club?
No?
She's good.
You can tell where that goes.
The proceeds, it says, this year's fair will help raise money for relief efforts in Japan. So it's a, you know,
Nice.
it's an extra reason to go and to see the artistic works of the students.
Okay. Also, on this Friday night, there is the talent show, and we have 14 acts that will be displayed. There's a juggling act, there's a dancing act, and instrumentals, and there's also a few singing acts as well. And the doors open for that at 6:30, and the actual talent show will begin around 7. And then also students on Friday the 15th before April vacation, they're excited to have a pep rally. And that will be during the last period of that Friday, which no student really would like to participate in class. So we're all excited for the pep rally.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And you know what we have before us? A class act.
Good
Thanks,
point,
Jess.
Dr. Sylvia. Report of the chair. Mine will be brief because I don't have much to report at this first meeting. At our next meeting, I will be assigning some members to the various committees. I think when Dr. Sylvia started a lot of the subcommittees, it was great. A lot of good things came out of them, and I would like to see that continue. So I'll have some dialogue with each one of you as to committees going forward. And I know everyone has busy schedules, so we'll try to be fair in how we divide it up, and some people might be on more than others, if that's fine with everyone. Report of the superintendent.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to report that 2 members of the school board and myself attended the Day on the Hill. I guess it's 2 weeks ago now that we went. In Gardner Auditorium at the State House, we heard legislators, Senator Steve Brewer, Chair of the Senate Ways and Means, Senator Catherine Clark, Co-Chair of the Joint Committee on Public Service, and Senator Sonia Chang Diaz from the Joint Committee on Education. We also heard from the leadership of MASC about the resolutions they were supporting, including the elimination of the windfall provision of Social Security for those folks on pensions and had put in their 40 quarters. The adequacy of Chapter 70 funding and the need to re-examine the funding formula. Those were all part of what was discussed as from the leadership of MASC. We had lunch with Susan Williams Gifford, and as always, the vocational schools culinary departments put on a spread that was excellent. Worth going just for the lunch.
Well, and everyone in the State House came down for it. It wasn't just for us. They basically catered for pretty much anyone, including people that might have come off the streets.
Yeah, it was a good take.
Yeah.
And Rhonda and I visited with Senator Pacheco, and I attached a bill about 40B housing that Senator Pacheco is sponsoring again, which talks about you being able to use approximately half of the housing stock that are in our mobile homes to be used towards 40B, which would put us over the limit so that developers couldn't come in and create more 40B. So it's an interesting thing and I think worth looking at. Yes, sir.
Did he have any comments as to whether he thought it was more likely to pass this year than in prior years?
I think, I won't speak for Rhonda, but I think it was, I felt I got a little bit of an education because I was unaware of the differences between the House version of the bill, Representative Gifford supported, versus his bill, and there were some significant differences, and I would have to say that from my own view, I think it would be easier to pass the Senate bill, because the House bill has a provision in it that asks people to prove their economic worth of 40B, and that since, as he explained it, you may have people who winter in Florida in a place and come back here in the summertime, they really don't want to go through that hassle of having to show their tax records and so forth. So it made sense to me that perhaps the Senate bill would be more likely to pass.
But he was optimistic. No.
I think that we discussed more about the differences between the two bills than when we talked to Representative Gifford. We were very supportive of it. So we basically said, what can we do to help? And then once we got schooled on the differences between the two, we didn't have enough time to make that same, we didn't make that same suggestion. So I didn't get a sense of whether he felt. He did say that, he pushes forward. He has the largest number of manufactured
homes. Thank you.
It's in the bill. Of any other senator in the Commonwealth, that he has the most number of units in his district. And I also don't know how many years that he has tried to push this forward. Is this the first one?
No.
Okay. Because I know that Representative Gifford, it's not her first year, but I didn't know if Senator Pacheco.
It doesn't have a lot of traction because it doesn't affect a lot of areas, and most of the cities already, have their fill of 40B, and then you have the opposite extreme where, because of social conscience, some districts believe that we're trying to avoid some sort of a redistribution of economics in a way, or where people live.
Right.
So
and
that's one of the reasons
talked
why.
About too. The lobbyists are.
The lobbyists.
Construction lobbyists.
The
yes,
construction
that's
lobbyists
the other
are.
thing, because
Sure.
there's, when they can come in and build when the town doesn't want them to build, it's work for people. It's, whatever field of the construction field you're in, and right now with the bad economy, it may not be the time to be saying, let's pass a law that may stop some building projects. So, that was my take on it.
Yeah.
What I don't understand on this law, though, and I don't propose to be an expert on it at all, and I very well may be wrong in this statement, but I know that this 40B, there are ceilings based on where you were located in the state, and we're clumped in with Boston.
Yep, you're correct.
And I, for the death of me, can't understand that. I can't understand how Wareham is clumped in with Boston and Marion's clumped in with New Bedford.
There are these things called catchment
Right.
Areas, and they change depending on which department you deal with. So when, Bob, I happened to get a letter that he was appointed as a liaison to the, was it the homeless or the welfare? Transitional assistance. But we are in the New Bedford catchment area for that.
For that. I know.
But for the housing, we're in the Boston
Area.
So
Which makes the ceiling much higher.
yes.
Why are you
Wait,
looking
I'm
for
sorry to
logic
make-
out of this?
It just
Point
doesn't
of,
make
point
any
of
sense.
information, Chair.
Time out.
If we're gonna go forward with
Not gonna happen.
discussion, I need to make a motion to go past the hour of 10.
Second.
All right.
Are you done with your report?
I just have one more item.
All right, so we have a motion to go past 10 and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Continue.
You want to say anything
No,
about it?
I'm done.
Sorry.
It's just ridiculous.
Okay. So that was the Day in the Hill. The last week in March was spent on MCAS, the long composition, and the ELA section, the reading section, the English section of the exam. Now we are in a hiatus in testing. In May, we have a week or 2 weeks of testing for the remainder of the MCAS. And my last item is about budget discussions. When I wrote this, we were approximately $600,000 to $700,000 apart. My understanding is that the town administrator this evening at FinCom was going to present a worksheet that he and I have been going back and forth on. We've met 2 times. And today, the financial analyst came down to my office 3 times bringing me numbers, and I sent him back up with numbers, and it was kind of like shuttle diplomacy. And we are at a point where $360,000 is where we are. So when you figure that we started at a $2,200,000 deficit or difference, shortfall, with a lot of hard work by a lot of people, we've got it down to $360,000, and we have a strategy through negotiations, if it's accepted, that would bridge that gap. The non-net, we were $150,000 apart, and I got that they would meet us halfway on that, so that we would only be about $75,000 difference on that part of it. And I have asked, and this, a couple members of the board have said to me that our number is our number, so that the number that I want to see, I've asked for a copy of the new iteration of the budget, which shows our number to be a number around, I'm going to just use a number, 25.8. It will be at least 500,000 more than where we were at last April election, or $1 million plus more than what the town administrator started us at after our 822 cut. But I will give us all that, and this is something I just have to ask the chairman, and I'm sorry, maybe it belongs in any other business, but under this budget section, if I get that document that has the right number before April town meeting, I'm wondering if we should have, even that evening, have a meeting of the school board to decide to take a vote to whether or not you want to support that number. Because we have not changed our budget. I mean, the one we voted was the one that was $2,200,000 difference from what was in the town administrator's budget.
Jeff?
I applaud vigorously the work that you and the town administrator have done to get as far as you appear to have gotten.
Absolutely.
Having said that, the only revised document I've seen, and this was as recently as essentially a week ago, bears no resemblance to what you are describing. So, put me in the Missouri category, you know?
When I have it to show you.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
and because what the town has in front of it now is what people think actually is the current state. And I just need to see it. And I don't need to see it from you, I need to see it from the town administrator, and then I can react.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But let me also agree with you that I think a meeting before town meeting to get the school committee's take on what's going to be presented at town meeting by the FinCom and the TA probably is going to be essential.
I was told by the analyst that they were going to schedule, the reason they were in a rush to get this up and down, getting the number, because they want to schedule the ad hoc committee, which I was told would be next Monday, and I said, I have not seen a posting, and at which he said that he would tell that to the town administrator, and the town administrator is going to be looking to meet with me tomorrow, at which point I will again ask for a revised town budget showing the number that I understand to be the number, one. Two, that the ad hoc committee, I want to see a posting that it's going to meet so that we can go through that and we can talk about how we got there.
And three, is it possible to have that document before the ad hoc committee meeting so we can study it?
I would hope, but I can't say
No
for
guarantees.
sure. Right, I
I
mean,
would
because
like
it's
that.
not my...
I understand, but maybe you could make that request.
I can make that request.
Thank you.
So once we have the documentation from the town administrator, then...
And a recommendation, hopefully, from the ad hoc.
Right.
That we could then come back to the...
Then
I would be much more secure with it being a recommendation from the ad hoc rather than just the superintendent.
And then we can post a special meeting so we can vote on it at that time, prior to the town meeting.
And just to add a little more confusion, Mr. Chairman, there is in my conversations with a number of people, including the town moderator, there is still discussion being made about delaying action on any financial matter for at least 2 or 3 weeks, which would ultimately have to be the decision of town meeting. But as of a short time ago, that was a recommendation that was going to be made, and then town meeting would decide whether they wanted to do it. So, just FYI.
For some reason, there was a big rush to get it done today.
Okay.
Good.
Anything else, Dr. Rabinovich?
No, thank you. I've said more than enough tonight.
Any other business?
Just one from me. I just want to congratulate our new elected officials, especially one of our former students, Joseph Ashley, as deputy moderator, as well as Ellen Begley and Michael Schneider as our new selectmen. I'll speak for I'm sure for all of us too, that I'm looking forward to working with our two newest selectmen as well as the entire board.
Dr. Sylvia?
I have a couple of pieces. One is unfinished business from when I was chair. And it kind of concerns me a little bit, but I think we really need to get it on the agenda. And I don't know if we are going to have a special meeting. I guess that's something we can decide at some point in time, but I think that we probably, no matter what, should have a meeting prior to town meeting, just to get our act together anyway, so that probably has to be scheduled, because I think town meeting starts on the 25th? 25th. So, if we are going to have it, we probably should decide tonight, and I'll leave that up to the chair, but I would say we have it regardless, even if it was early before town meeting. The other thing is the piece of unfinished business that I think has budget implications. I didn't know anything about this new revelation, but we haven't gotten an athletic report. We're now finished with 2 seasons, and we still haven't gotten an athletic report. and we don't know what has been spent, we don't know how much revenue has come in, we don't know how it relates to the FY11 budget, if we're at budget, above budget, below budget, or whatever the case may be. So I think that, and I'm remiss because that certainly could have been done during my chairmanship, but I really think that we need to know what's going on in the athletic department in terms of the budget and the receipts and everything.
Do you want a winter report? Because I believe we had a fall.
I don't think we did.
Did
I don't
we
think we
have a
did.
fall?
I thought we had a fall, but
You
I
do?
could be wrong.
I don't remember that.
Well, I was on an athletic committee with, Kenny, you weren't you on it?
Yep.
And I know I saw some numbers.
Well, I may be wrong.
I
but
don't think that
remember
was
it.
presented to us on the school.
I don't
committee.
remember
Okay,
any
so maybe it was
athletic
just the
report.
athletic
Maybe,
committee.
maybe. So, all right. But, so, that would be fall and winter, then we would do.
Well, I mean, whatever, but I mean, I just think that we've gone through 2 seasons now, and to my recollection, unless the board can, because I am getting old, I don't recall having that report, and I just think it's important, especially in
Anna
terms
may
of
have
budget.
some information on that.
So, and the only reason I bring it up on new business, because we're not gonna be meeting again in April, and I'd like to have this information, maybe that we can talk a little bit about it, or I don't know how that's gonna impact the meeting we have before town meeting, but I think that if we're gonna be making some budget adjustments, that, certainly would like to know, at least from the perspective of 2 high attendance seasons,
Mhm.
where we are in terms of that account.
Ms. Miranda, you have some information for that?
Yes, historically, we've been doing after the fall season, we do the report, and then we wait for winter and spring season to totally conclude, so this way the athletic director can give you the real final numbers.
Did we do a fall report?
We did. We did a fall report, and then, in tradition, we've been doing this for a couple of years now.
I don't remember that.
And then winter and, yeah, I'm pretty sure we did.
But I don't have a problem with giving the winter report. and
It doesn't
maybe-
matter, I just don't recall having a fall report. I just don't.
Well, all I can
Can't
assure
think
you
of
is
a
the
way
numbers
to-
exist,
Yeah.
because I've seen them.
So what we should do then is, if
Maybe
we set
Michelle
the
could check
date,
the records on that.
we set the date for a special meeting prior to the town meeting, we could have a couple agenda items, and one would be a report of the athletic
Yeah, the
department.
second
Mr.
could be
Chairman?
budget.
Yes.
I just want to revise my remarks. I now realize the numbers that I'm referring to actually were last year's numbers.
Okay.
So I have not seen the numbers for this fall. I stand corrected.
I do not remember that.
I don't either.
I don't remember the athletic director
No,
coming before
no.
us in the fall.
I saw a full report for last year. That's what I saw.
When are you back?
The 12th. So is the meeting is April 25th, which is a Monday?
Mm-hmm.
Are we looking, so I imagine town meeting starts at 7?
Yep.
So are we looking to meet at 6 PM on the 25th?
That's
I don't
kind of
know.
close if you're going to have the athletic report and the budget.
Well, I don't know if you
discussion.
want to have to, it's entirely up to him if he wants to put it on that agenda. We can do it another time, but it would just seem to me that it would definitely have budget implications. That's the only reason I'm bringing it up on the new business tonight.
So do you want to do a meeting on that Wednesday before, the 20th?
It's school vacation, I don't know if everybody can
Oh.
come.
We could do the Monday if we can push it up. Is 5:30 workable? Does that give us sufficient time to address the 2 issues?
I don't know if you even want to address the 2 issues, but I just brought it up because I didn't think it had been done.
I'm not generally available on Mondays. There's too many school activities on Mondays for me.
Well, we definitely want to meet prior to the town meeting, so
How about the 20th?
the
It's a
20th
Wednesday.
is,
Are you available the 20th? That's during vacation week. It's a Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going anywhere. Darn
Does
it.
anybody have a problem with the 20th?
No.
No.
that works. So we could,
Michelle will be away,
Yeah.
but we have a substitute.
Is it going to be 7, or are we going to do it earlier?
See if Ruth wants to come out of the time.
What time? What time? Regular 7 or?
to be consistent, yeah. 7 PM on the 20th. we'll just need confirmation that someone will be able to fill in for Michelle, is that?
Yes, we'll work on that tomorrow.
Let's not pad the agenda.
No, we'll,
I beg your pardon.
2 items sound appropriate.
there might be 3. I know
Thank you,
they
Mr.
talked
Chairman.
about,
That's, all I had.
trip.
Oh.
Okay, any other, Jeff?
No.
Rachel? No other business, I want to entertain a motion
So
to
moved.
adjourn.
Second.
Can I finish my first official meeting? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
We are
Second.
adjourned.
So made.
Thank you.
Well done.